I think the first item will be the roll call, if we can.
For the Joint Appropriations Committee, August 19th, Senator Driscoll,
Here.
Senator Grew,
Here.
Senator Larson,
Here.
Senator French,
Here.
Representative Alleman,
Present.
Representative Angelos, Representative Haroldson,
Here.
Representative Pendergraph,
Here.
Representative Sherwood, Representative Smith,
Here.
Co-Chairman Bear,
Here.
Chairman Salazar.
Here,
You have a quorum.
thank you. I want to make a couple comments here. First of all, we're in an incredible facility. This is one of the most incredible facilities, I think, in the country. And we owe it all to Mr. Dan Starks. And by the way, I beyond the fact that we have the beauty of the town of Du Bois and are in this incredible facility, I want you to know that the museum waived their fee in allowing us to be here. What a privilege it is. And I know he's not going to approve of this, but Mr. Starks, Dan, could you stand up so we could thank you for everything you've done for our state? I would encourage any member who hasn't taken the tour of the museum to do so, because it's one of the primo in the world. So the other comment that I'd like to make is, as some of you may know, our colleague, Senator Darren Smith, was appointed by President Trump to be the U.S. Attorney for the state of Wyoming. He left a vacancy on this committee, and the President of the Senate, Bo Beitman, has appointed Senator Tim French to fill that vacancy. So Senator French, thank you for taking on this responsibility. We welcome you and appreciate you, as I say, taking on this big responsibility on the Joint Appropriations Committee. So good to have you here. Before we start into the agenda, I'll call on my co-chair if he'd like to make any comments over for the next 2 days.
Thank you, Mr. Co-Chair. Of course, I'd like to make comments. I too want to thank Mr. Starks for this great opportunity to use this facility, and to have our meeting in this part of the state is very important. We want to be out here where the people can come to our meetings and be a part of the process. Funding is probably the most important thing that the legislature can do. And so that's what the work is that we're going to be about. We have taken on a very important task this summer by taking on the wildfire issue. And as you all are aware, in the news right now, we have a major conflagration just to our east and a little north of here. And so this is a very poignant discussion. We want to come out with a good solution for the future of Wyoming. And so we need to take this very seriously and spend a good amount of time on it. We chose not to do a task force. So this committee is the task force for this issue. And we want to spend some time on this. And we've already spent one day in meeting in Gillette. Today will be another half day of meeting, and then hopefully one more meeting where we can wrap up and decide what the legislation that comes out of this meeting should look like. We also have two other very important issues for tomorrow. One is the DD waiver, which we took a tour of a facility in Riverton today that was very helpful, helping us to see just who's being impacted by these programs. So we'll continue to work on that tomorrow, as well as the sales tax issue for small communities and counties. And we consider that very important. So we'll continue this great work, and thank you for the opportunity to speak about it, Co-Chair.
Great. Good. So with that, we will enter into the agenda. The first item is the Wyoming Wildfire Mitigation Management and Response Funding. And is State Forester Kelly Norris here? Please come up. Welcome. Good to have you. Very important issue. Please, everyone. And if I could ask all of you fine people just to identify yourselves for those watching. And the mic is yours.
Good afternoon. Good. We good? All
Good.
right. Good afternoon, Chairman Salazar, Chairman Co-Chairman Bear, members of the Joint Appropriations Committee. Welcome, Senator French. Good to see you. My name is Kelly Norris. I'm the Wyoming State Forester, and I will have the others up here with me to introduce themselves. So I'll pass it on to you real quick, Jared.
Jared DeLay, Assistant State Forester, Fire Management Officer.
Good afternoon, Fire Warden for Sublette County Unified Fire. And I also serve as the president of the Wyoming Fire Advisory Board of the Wyoming Rural Fire Association.
J.R. Fox, I'm the fire warden for Campbell County and also president of the Wyoming Fire Chiefs Association.
Okay, I am going to kick off our presentation on a 2025 wildfire update per the agenda. So I'll kick us off and then we'll be passing it on to provide just a bit of a county perspective as well. So I'll start with an overview of what's going on in the state. So Wyoming has had 755 wildfires that have burned approximately 150,000 acres. In comparison to last year at this time, Wyoming is tracking way ahead in the number of fires, probably over 120. We have been more successful in keeping fires smaller this year in comparison to last year. We are right now tracking state and private lands are ahead in acres burned than federal lands. I want to acknowledge the additional aircraft that have been extremely helpful and are making a big difference this year. They're really helping us to respond and assist with fires more effectively across Wyoming. We are stopping the majority of the fires, boxing them in with retardant to assist the boots on the ground, allowing them more time to get to these active fires. We have had 13 emergency fire suppression account approved fires from 8 different counties so far this year. One of the EFSA fires currently, I believe, did we make it to Fremont County yesterday?
I think it's right at the county line.
Okay, so we have one EFSA fire that may or may not include 2 to 3 counties. We are on the cusp between Washakie and Fremont. Same date last year, we are tracking ahead in the number of EFSA fires, ahead of the acres burned in these EFSA fires by over 60,000. So we are double where we were last year at this time. And we are ahead in costs, 5 to 6 million compared to where we were last year. Currently, we believe we've committed approximately 15 million through cost shares from the EFSA fires to wildfire suppression in 2025. I do want to remind the committee that we are ahead of the August 21st storm that really caused some major large wildfires in northeastern Wyoming last year. It is obvious to really predict. I don't have a crystal ball on what's to come. But I do want to, there's a couple of things to note in particular. 6 of the largest fires in Wyoming history have occurred in the last 2 years. On top of that, we have now hit over 1 million acres burned. Because last year we were over 150,000, you add another 150, you're over 1 million now. So we are tracking between last year and going into this year now, we've hit now 1 million. We have received one FMEG declaration fire. The Red Canyon fire became an approved FMEG starting Friday, August 15th. This is the first one of the year. And FMEG stands for a Fire Management Assistance Grant. That is a grant that we receive when a fire is getting to a certain high level risk. FEMA has certain restrictions that they're looking for. And when we receive that, we can get up to 75% of costs recouped after for reimbursement. Our aviation assets have been busy. The Wyoming Hell Attack Program has responded to 33 fires, 4 false alarms, 4 mapping missions, and 1 repeater mission. And they've already had over 150 flight hours. Our medium helicopter, which is a Type 2 helicopter, has responded to 11 fires and provided over 76,000 gallons of water. Between the 2 helicopters, we are ahead of the same numbers of responses as we were last year at this time. And Hell Attack has been everywhere. You know, I've been everywhere, man song. Hell Attack has been in Wyoming. They've been to the Shoshone, multiple times. They've been to the Southern Bighorns, going between fires above 10 Sleep and then over to the Redwall Country in Johnson County. They've been down in Carbon County assisting on private and federal fires on the Medbo. They've been up on Casper Mountain, out in Converse County, out in Gillette, up to Sheridan. So they've been everywhere. Our contracted seats, we have 4 single-engine air tankers. They have responded to 42 fires, dropped over 146,000 gallons of retardant. And out of those fires, they've been to 11 different counties. We've had 2 of our seats over in the Worland seat base, and we've had 2 seats in the Casper seat base this year, and it's worked out very well. This past weekend, we did move the Worland seats over to a newly set up Gillette seat base as more aviation has come into the Worland seat base, and this includes a hoist helicopter from the Wyoming National Guard. State Forestry, along with Wyoming BLM and Campbell County, have officially set up the Gillette reload base for our seats. We even have a functioning trailer for the seat base manager, thanks to the Wyoming BLM, who donated their old trailer from the Casper seat base. So it's sitting at the airport there. The State Forestry Smoke Busters have responded to 8 wildfires in 5 different counties so far this summer. At the beginning of July, Wyoming was experiencing more than 10 fires per day. The fuels indices, as well as the weather predictions, brought us concern going into that long 4th of July weekend. State Forestry did utilize the emergency fire suppression account emergency rules, and we brought in a South Dakota module for pre-positioning. Over the course of the few days, that module assisted with 5 different fires that the county engines could not access. We found the ability to pre-position resources very useful and effective for response, especially in the collaboration with the local county and federal resources. Last week, we also utilized state-to-state agreements and were able to bring in 2 engines with chase trucks fully staffed with fire operation leadership, along with a Type 2 hand crew from New Mexico. These resources went directly to assist the private and state land fires in 10 Sleep area. Once they're released from that area, we are going to keep these resources as long as New Mexico will let us and help with the initial attack response here in Wyoming. We also have an engine from North Carolina and one from Wisconsin that are to be arriving soon to help us on the pre-positioning and fire response here for the other areas of Wyoming. So just being able to utilize the EFSA funding to assist with this added capacity for state and private fires have become extremely effective and very helpful during this high risk fire time. Speaking of the emergency fire suppression account rules, they are closed to public comment. They closed on August 11th. We took in all the comments and we're taking them into consideration, and we'll continue with the rule change process as we move forward. Looking into the rest of 2025, Wyoming is dry and we continue to have high risk, hence why we brought in some extra pre-positioning resources. The governor has issued an executive order declaring an emergency response to multiple fires burning in Wyoming. State Forestry is supporting Wyoming Homeland Security and their processes as they work through any additional declarations. Wyoming currently has, well, before the county commissioners today, all their meetings, we had 15 counties with some level or portion of their county in fire restrictions. And I believe as of today, we had 5 more counties go into fire restrictions. So we believe we have about 20 counties at least into fire restrictions. This is, we don't remember a time of this ever occurring. So with that, we also have, we're pretty sure BLM has statewide fire restrictions, all the BLM areas. I think most of them do. And then we have the Bridger Teton, the Shoshone, the Ashley, and the Medicine Bow route all have some level of fire restrictions in place. The Medicine Bow went to level 2, so no campfires are allowed in the southern part of the Medicine Bow route forest. Above normal fire potential is forecasted for southwestern and western Wyoming for August and persistent into September for the Bridger Teton National Forest. The east side of the divide, the pattern has been much more favorable. There's been more moisture coming on that side of the state. But the overall trend in the long range forecast is we're likely to see warmer conditions, warmer than normal for Wyoming. The national preparedness level is back up to preparedness level 4. So nationally, the total acres burned is 83% of the 10-year average, but the fires are 120% above the 10-year average. So very similar to where Wyoming is at. They're seeing a lot more fires, but the acres burned is less. Across the West, Colorado is having a fire season, along with Utah, Nevada, and Montana just started to blow up again. The hills, the Black Hills have started to have fires this past weekend. There's been fires in California, Washington, and Idaho is also getting active. Lastly, I want to share with the committee that State Forestry has recently started a test pilot project with the company Pano to provide live fire detection through 360-degree cameras in the Casper Mountain area. Pano is providing 3 cameras, and State Forestry is utilizing grant funding for a 4th camera. All 4 cameras are live, and State Forestry staff, the interagency dispatch centers, along with Natrona and Converse County dispatch centers, our fire wardens, and the federal leadership have all been trained and have access to the notification and interface system. We're working with Pano to get a public-facing program so it can be added to our website. The cameras were able to pick up the muddy fire and provide notification to Casper Interagency Dispatch. We do hope that this new pilot program will help us identify fires quicker and within that area so we can better protect the homes, the private and state lands, and the critical infrastructure that provide important economic value to Wyoming. I'm going to stop here, but I do want to say, so far in 2025, we've had no loss of life, no major injuries, no loss of primary homes. And I'm incredibly grateful for our staff, for our counties and our federal partners, for all the hard work and the coordination that everyone has been doing together, because those are very important achievements. And with that, I can pass it off to Chief Cooper.
Let me ask if there's any questions. First of all, senators on Zoom, don't hesitate to ask any questions you'd like. So anyone? We'll continue then. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Again, Kelly had asked me to be here today and to try to provide kind of a summary, a snapshot, if you will, maybe an anecdote of how the fire season's going. And what I'm going to do is just give you a story of a fire in Sublette County that was impactful, but it'll help address some of the problems that we're going to address later in the day and help kind of illustrate some of the recommendations and why they're important. So with that being said, on June 27th this year in Sublette County, we were dispatched to a wildland fire. It was a grass fire and grass and sage right in the middle of a subdivision. It was about 3 o'clock in the afternoon on a red flag warning day. It was hot, dry, and windy. We responded quickly, identified that there was a significant smoke column, arrived on scene, and just as described, it was right in the heart of a subdivision. So we immediately implemented evacuations. Tried to protect, lives first and protect the citizens at risk there and get them out of harm's way. And then we started ordering additional resources. We've got an amazing relationship with State Forestry, with the BLM, and with the Forest Service. And when they all heard that we had a big fire, they were all, responding immediately and worked shoulder to shoulder with us to help deal with this fire. Like I said, when we arrived on scene, we initially focused on life safety, but then our firefighters shifted and then focused on what's called a point protection strategy. And what that means is we just assign an engine to as many of the structures as we can and prioritize what can be saved and try to assign firefighters to spray water and try to divert the fire around. So we protect the point that the firefighters are at and let the fire pass around us and continue, because we're not going to be able to put the fire out. So we try to protect the primary infrastructure, the homes that were threatened. And then immediately after arriving on scene and assigning our engines to point protection strategy, we also requested assistance from the State Forestry Division and got the helicopter coming over to Sublette County, and they immediately engaged and started dropping buckets. We also got all 4 of the seats, the single engine air tankers. 2 of them came out of Casper, 2 of them came out of Worland, and I couldn't tell you what the flight time was, an hour and a half, or whatever it was. It seemed like a long time, but those guys got there just right away. arrived on scene and started immediately dropping retardants. And then there was actually an air attack platform that kind of managed the chaos from above them and helped to coordinate, where those retardant drops were going to be most effective. And they identified that we were also going to need what's called a LAT, a large air tanker. So the seats were great at being kind of surgical with their drops, but we're also going to need larger retardant lines to protect the infrastructure. And then, one of the things we try to do is not only protect what's immediately in front of us and where the fire is, but we also got to forecast where the fire's going and start trying to prevent it from impacting, infrastructure or values at risk. And we immediately identified that the wind direction was pushing the fire straight onto a large section, a school section of state property, a state jurisdiction. And then right beyond that was a large BLM section. And then right above that, just right at the toe of a slope, was right onto the Forest Service and the U.S. Forest Service wilderness area. And what we decided to do, and this was actually a critical decision, was we wanted to throw as much resources at this fire to put it out quickly and prevent it from going on to the state, the BLM, and eventually into the wilderness. Because what we were looking to do was try to keep the fire as small as we could and prevent, a multiple week or even month long, fire response. And we were successful in doing that, but it took a significant amount of coordination and really a lot of money in the form of retardant drops and helicopter. We ended up getting 4 helicopters total. The other 3 came actually 2 from the Forest Service. And one was, we stole from an adjacent fire. And the reason why I bring all that up is it's pretty important to understand that our goal in this was to throw as much at the fire as we could to keep it small and keep the cost down. And that's really important to understand. But for me as a county fire warden, I understood that there was a chance that we may or may not have access to the emergency fire suppression account to cover those costs. And there's some stipulations that have to be met in order to be eligible for reimbursement. And I knew that there could have been hundreds of thousands of dollars that would have come back to the county and that we would have been ultimately responsible for if it wasn't covered by the emergency fire suppression account. Thankfully, we've got an excellent relationship with State Forestry. I was on the phone with Kelly and with her staff immediately and requested assistance and was immediately supported with that. So we knew it was going to be covered. But I wanted you to understand that from my perspective, I was ordering significant resources with cost associated with them that I didn't know that we were going to be able to pay for. And that's going to be important later today when we talk about some of the recommendations to the EFSA. The other thing I wanted to really emphasize is that 99% of the time, we go to wildland fires and we're able to catch those fires and keep them small and less than an acre. So we've Sublette County has been busy all summer long. We're generally going to about 1 fire a day or maybe every other day, and every one of those fires we've been able to catch and keep small. But some of these fires, maybe 1% of the time, I couldn't give you an exact number, they do escape initial attack. And this was one of those fires that went into multiple operational periods, went into the next day. And why that's important to understand is because my organization's a volunteer fire department. We have 6 fire stations, and right now we've got about 75 volunteer firefighters. I'm full-time paid as the chief, but the volunteers, the people that are that do the work, they've got jobs to get back to. And so on that day, it was a Friday afternoon. The firefighters all responded. 5 of our 6 stations responded and were able to handle the fire with initial attack. But the fire was still burning the next day. And unfortunately, all of our volunteers had to go back to work. They've all got full-time jobs. I couldn't get anybody that was available the next day to help what's called mop up, or where we make sure there's no smoldering materials that's going to kick back up another fire when the wind comes up. And so what ended up happening is I actually had to hire an engine from the U.S. Forest Service to sit on that fire for the next days in order to allow our volunteer firefighters to go back to work. And that's an important illustration of the workforce for many volunteer fire departments in the state of Wyoming, is they're just not able to sit on these long duration events. And, one of the recommendations that we have about, staffing emergency modules with State Forestry Division is to help pick that torch up and carry it forward and staff these fires for, the second day or third day or however long is necessary past initial attack. And my point is that, the Wyoming Fire Service does an amazing job of responding to initial attack and taking care of the fire on the first day, but many fire departments in the state of Wyoming really struggle with that staffing on day 2, day 3, et cetera. And in my own example on this fire in June, I didn't have any volunteers that were able to staff that fire the next day. And so to me, it's really illustrative of the bigger problem that we're facing and the importance of the recommendations that we're here to present, that we've already presented to you in your Gillette meeting, but we really have some additional information for you today with the specific cost and looking forward to presenting that to you. So like I said, that's just kind of an anecdote of how the fire season's going this year, but it's illustrative of the problems that we're facing, and it's certainly not unique. And with that, I'm sorry.
What day was that second day?
Saturday? Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah. Sorry. Her point being that even on the weekends, it's still very difficult to staff, even on the weekends. And so, yeah, the first day the fire burned on a Friday. I would have traditionally in years past expected to be able to staff a fire on Saturday and Sunday on a weekend. And in this case, I called every firefighter and, hey, we really need all the help we can get. Where are you at and are you available? And they just weren't available on a weekend to help us staff that fire. And that's unique. That's the first time that's happened to us in Sublette County. It's difficult to overcome that staffing challenge. Thank you for that. Actually, any questions before I hand it over to my counterpart here?
Mr. Chairman. Any questions? Representative Harrelson, and then I think there's someone down there too.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So thank you guys again for coming and continuing this conversation. So the picture you just gave us, obviously, where we've got a flame front moving towards state section, BLM section, national forest. Obviously, you get into that. I mean, you're going to get that. I mean, you're going to have an upslope chimney effect. We're going to lose this fire. That's what you're saying. So two things I'm hearing. One, staffing. Second, we didn't know what the cost was going to be, but at that point, we're fighting a fire, not worrying about a cost, which obviously is important. But what I want to paint, and I think it's something that I know we've talked a lot about before, by calling in a large level of air support, how many acres burned compared to the potential of if that would have gotten into that I would assume timbered portion, and what would have we been looking at? See, I think what we need to also understand is, because one of the things that Director Norris, you mentioned that I think is really important, is we have more fires than normal, but we have less acreage than normal. And let's talk about that, because yes, we've had a worse fire year, but we have not burned the acres potentially that we could have. And so can you just kind of explain a little bit of, give us that scenario if it would have just been deuce and a halves and not seats and helis and lats?
Mr. Chairman. Representative Harrelson, thank you very much. That's exactly poignant to your discussion. Yes, the simple answer is had we not had aerial support and the ability to support it with helicopters and retardant drops, there's no question in my mind we would have lost that fire. The wind was sustained 30 miles an hour, and it would have absolutely continued past the subdivision. We actually dropped the retardant right on the edge of the fence line of the subdivision. Had it not stopped there, though, it would have certainly continued onto the state section, onto the BLM section, and straight up into the timber. And it, the fire, we ended up successfully stopping the fire. The perimeter, we mapped it at 209 acres, which is in realistic terms to the 100,000 acre fire the Director Norris was just describing is very insignificant. But the success, to your point, is we did stop it at 209 acres rather than having a 100,000 acre fire. And furthermore, to your point, we were able to stop it in grass and sage, the fine flashy fuel that was most appropriate to use the retardant drops and reduce that flame front and bring it down, so our firefighters in our engines and on the ground could actually successfully suppress the fire. Had that not worked, though, it would have been in the timber, which is a much more difficult fire and a longer duration fire to put out. And in my opinion, we would have likely been up there for the rest of the summer, with a large, type 1 or critical incident management team for multiple weeks and multiple millions of dollars. And instead, our estimate is that we think there's about $150,000 or maybe $200,000. The costs are still coming in on the total cost of that fire. But, pennies on the dollar compared to the multiples of millions of dollars that it would have taken had it made it to the timber and burned for the rest of the summer. So thank you very much. And to your point, smaller acreage fire, as opposed to a long duration, large acre fire, we were able to catch it and keep it small.
Who else? Was there a question down here? Co-Chairman Bear.
Thank you, Mr. Co-Chair. Mr. Cooper, the first question I'll have is for you, and maybe the second is for Forrester Norris. So on this mop-up, I assume that the mop-up is going to be less because we stopped the fire at a smaller area. One of the things that Forrester Norris went through a litany of what our resources have been doing this summer, which I appreciate. But I may have missed it, but I didn't hear about our smoke busters. And when I think of mop-up, I think of the smoke busters crew. So were they not available on that weekend when you were trying to achieve that? And Ms. Norris, if you could tell us, what they've been doing throughout the summer, the smoke busters. Thank you.
I'll hand it over in just a second. I will say that fire happened on Saturday. I requested assistance from the Forest Service, and they staffed it with an engine with 7 people on it, all day Saturday, all day Sunday, and half a day Monday. And then they returned it back to me for local control, and we put it in patrol status. And then I just drove out there every day and continued to monitor it and make sure there wasn't any new smoke or any threat to the fire embers being kicked up from a windstorm. As to the availability of the state crew, I don't know the answer to the top of that. I'll hand it over.
Mr. Chairman, I can't remember. What date was that fire? June 27th. They could have easily been on a fire. They might have been up by Ogden. I can't remember if that was around that time. So the smoke busters have responded to 8 wildfires in 5 different counties so far this year. With that, they've been to Crook County. They've been to Natrona County on the State Muddy fire. They've been to one in Converse County. They were ordered actually through the BLM to help support that one. And they are on, and they're not available because they are on the Big Spring fires, Big Creek. They were ordered first for the one that, what was that called? Big Creek. And then once they finished mopping up that one, they moved on over to Big Creek, Spring Creek. Too many creeks above 10 sleep. So yes, and now that they're there, right, and assigned to that fire, until that fire no longer needs them, they will not be released. And so they are not available to anywhere else in the state.
Representative Harrelson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So just to follow up on Chairman Bear's question, what is our policy? So in that situation where you're like, hey, I don't have guys, I'm needing something. What is the policy for calling in the smoke busters and that crew, that inmate crew? What is that policy? Because just a question. I mean, obviously, our goal is to be able to get more of those assets for you guys. But if there's not a policy in place to basically use that asset before, say, National Forest, can we talk about that and what that policy is?
Mr. Chairman, Representative. So the priority would be state and private lands, and that's really where we try to focus that resource on. And the Spring Creek fire and then the Big Creek fire before that all started on private land. So the counties themselves asked for that request to have the smoke busters because it is one of the state assets. So that's where we focused them and sent them over there.
And I can follow up a little bit. Once they're not available, it's just a federal hand crew. And the first EFSA fire of this year was in Crook County. It was 4 acres near Senator Driscoll's place, smoke busters were on there, but they still needed another hand crew. So the county still had to hit their floor costs and order a federal hand crew to help the smoke busters. So just because you have the smoke busters coming doesn't mean you may not need more hand crews too.
Thank you, Mr. Co-Chair. Follow up to Speaker Pro Tem's question on policy, and don't take this wrong. We don't want to get into the business of dictating any kind of policy. We trust your expertise in that area, but we do want to understand it when we're approaching it from a funding angle. And so I'm going to assume that the reason we couldn't divide up the smoke busters is because of the management of that crew from the Department of Corrections. It really has to all stay together. Is that an accurate assumption?
Mr. Chairman, yes, and also staffing qualifications. So we are when the smoke busters aren't available is because we don't have certain staff available to take them, because you have to have fire qualifications of crew bosses and certain requirements in that. And so we have crew supervisors that are in the process of going through the Wyoming Department of Corrections 6-week course. So they're not available. And then we have crew members that have yet been signed off on certain task books to take them out on their own. So that's the challenge we have, is you have to have both experience in fire and requirements with DOC. And then we can't replace one of our staff that may have the skill set of taking out a crew, because they don't have the 6-week DOC training with them. So they're not allowed to.
Mr. Co-Chairman, little different story on the eastern side of the state from what we faced last year, but I would like to knock on wood because we're 2 days away from August 21st. But we definitely have had more moisture, a wet spring, and we've had continued thunderstorms almost near daily. It seems like building over the bighorns, moving into the eastern side of the state. Campbell County, we've had 90 initial attack fires this year. Acres burned is just under 2,000 acres. Some of these storms producing July 3rd, we had 16 wildland fires reported within 1 hour, followed by 2 homes struck by lightning for structure fires. So we've had some fairly intense storms this summer. Luckily, the rain has followed most of those storms and has continued to do so, which has helped us out tremendously. A little bit of a success story with the EFSA account, the ability to pre-position. The smoke busters were not available over the 4th of July weekend. State Forestry was able to bring over a suppression module from South Dakota. And initially the plan was we were just going to pre-position them for initial attack. However, as I mentioned, July 3rd, we had plenty of initial attack when they arrived. So they never actually left Campbell County. We used them for 5 days on 3 separate fires. And then when the smoke busters became available, they were released back to South Dakota. The suppression module, very capable, they're self-sufficient, and they're a great addition to the local resources. We've had some conversation about crews and smoke busters. We had a fire, 187 acre fire in the middle of my county, very steep terrain. We were able to put in some indirect dozer line, and the Rocky Mountain Coordination Center had a crew pre-positioned in Buffalo. So when that happens, when there's pre-positioned resources, we can't just take those, if you will. We have to go through the process, through the Casper, in our case, the Casper Dispatch Center, which then goes through Rocky Mountain. Rocky Mountain area is a region. It's Wyoming, Colorado, South Dakota, Kansas, Nebraska. So they're looking at kind of the bigger picture when it comes to fire resources, where they move some of those chess pieces. We did get permission to utilize that crew on our fire, and part of that was it was mixed ownership. So the county was providing the engine support, and the BLM was going to cover the cost of this 20-person Type 2 IE crew. halfway through the first shift, the coordination center in Colorado pulled that hand crew for a higher priority fire down in Colorado. So we lost our hand crew about noon that day. It was too late in the evening to get the smoke busters mobilized and arranged for the overnight guard situation. So we did order them for the next morning. And as they were mobilizing, we had some fairly significant rain that we were able to cancel that order. But a little bit similar conversation. There's a lot of moving pieces to crews and ordering and what you get at the end of the day. So I am a firm believer in state controlled resources, not subject to RMCG, would be a win for local jurisdictions. And finally, Mr. Co-Chairman, state aircraft. As you've heard, it was a big win this summer. Lots of initial attack. We're still in August. We still have a lot of fire season left. But we've seen significant use of that aviation across the state. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? Yes, Co-Chairman Barrett.
Thank you, Mr. Co-Chair. Chief Fox, thank you for being here. You'd mentioned, and we do feel blessed with the moisture we've had in the northeast part of the state. And I agree with the knock on wood for now. But we're going to get some testimony later from some other people, but I'd like to hear your testimony just from your perspective on the Cheatgrass since last year's fires. As you're looking out over Campbell County, what are your thoughts on the fire danger based on what's come up this year, especially with this new moisture?
Mr. Co-Chair, I think our ag producers and anybody driving down any of our highways in northeast Wyoming can attest to the overabundance of cheatgrass this year. And it is definitely a concern if anybody has had firsthand experience with fires and cheatgrass. It is an invasive species that is very difficult to contain fire with that fuel type specifically. So I would agree with your sentiment or that it's abundant and it is a concern. And I think it's probably far beyond Campbell County and all those fires in northeast Wyoming. I believe, there's a lot of that fuel load out there, and it's definitely a concern for fire management on how to contain those fires.
Hello. Anyone else? Anyone else? Yes. Speaker.
Thank you,
Pro
Mr.
Tem.
Chairman. Sorry, I know we're kind of bouncing back and forth and I'm not trying to hog the mic, but so who is the final say on when we're allocating assets to sit there and say this is a bigger concern than this? I mean, this year so who's kind of that control room operator for the state's assets and knowing when and where to send it, when to pull it, when to replace it and put it in different places? Kind of how are we looking at that?
Mr. Chairman, Representative, from a state level with the state resource, our duty officer, whoever's filling that role for that day, makes those calls. And then if it's combating values at fires that have similar values, then, we'll try to pull together, a short group of us, especially there in Cheyenne, probably myself and Kelly be involved in that, of just trying to allocate those resources in the right place to where the largest value is at risk. Yes. Yeah. And then that's for us. And then we don't have any of the control over the of the federal resources that come pre-positioned in, but there's a state forester has a seat at that table at the regional level. So we can myself right now, I'm the chair of the Rocky Mountain Coordinating Group. I can make those calls to some people and talk to the coordination center about hey, we need this, maybe we need that crew for 2 days and then you can have them back. We can have those discussions so we can politic for it.
Okay, anyone else? Anyone else? Any final comments? Appreciate you all being here today very much.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Senator Driscoll. Thank you.
First, bottom of my heart, thank you, Kelly. What you guys have been doing, I've been following. I haven't been picking on you much. It's absolutely incredible what's going on and the kind of job you guys have done, what you're facing. My question more about procedure is, what can we provide that would bring down fire costs and make you guys more effective? What tools are you guys short in the tool chest? Or what resources could we do to make you guys more effective? And once again, I really appreciate the comments on preventing fires, that we can actually help, not so we're filling the suppression account. We maybe can cut some cost out of it and spend a little upfront on it. I appreciate your comments. Thank you.
Right, Mr. Chairman, Senator, that is a good question. I think what we're seeing, and I was just at last night's meeting in Thermopolis and had to hear firsthand from that fire chief who said, we have 27, maybe it was 27, 26 volunteer firefighters for all of that area, and 7 of them couldn't make it and they had to go home, to work. They worked the fire, and then at 5 o'clock in the morning, they went to work the next day during that fire. So what we really need we need resources. We need state resources to help. There's a missing connection when we go from volunteer all the way up to federal, for those private landowners, for the knowledge and the skill bases. And when we look at the additional opportunities that we could have on the ground for safety, there's missing leadership in there, and knowledge that really, I think, could be extremely helpful for us being more effective on the ground is those resources. And it's, again, it's significant, as you heard from Chief Cooper. It's story after story. These EFSA fires that we had this year are because they needed just a hand crew for another day or two because we didn't have it. So that's my thought on it, and I'll pass it off to Jared.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't know, when you ask about what kind of resources, I'm never going to turn something down. I mean, if you give us the world, we'll take the world and make it work. And if you give us half of it, well, we'll make that work too. I've been doing this for almost 30 years now. So as a fire organization, we always have workarounds. It's never no. Well, let me figure out how I can make it work for myself. So no, I'd love to sit here and create some organization with you guys to figure out what we need to do and see if we can make it work. So I won't turn anything down, whatever we decide.
Mr. Chairman, follow up a little bit.
Yes, please.
First, I want to thank you for your 30 years of service. I've watched you guys all over, and I love your attitude, but mine is, if you had a wish list, it's not, the more we can make you more effective, to me, it's the cheapest investment. I look at going back last year to the seats, and I was kind of shocked we got it done. And obviously they've paid a 10-year dividend in 1 year, and we're halfway through the fire season. It's been fortuitous we did it, and it's been great. So what can we look at next? And a little of mine goes back to your volunteer, maybe Kelly, either an enhancement of the retirement benefits for these fighters or some types of incentives, because I know I've got some really good friends that the retirement makes a big difference in their life. Used to be virtually every ranch was volunteer, and partially because of the way we go through it and whatnot. Now there's not as many. I know my son goes to every fire around the country. He is not a firefighter because of part of the requirements. I was hoping we could find, but maybe some type of deal. We sit down and figure out some workarounds on that to get them, because the locals are dying. Both our EMTs and our fire people get worked in the ground. I mean, if you want to be a ag person, you can spend, it's just like branding season. You can spend your entire summer on fires, not doing work at home. And I'm one of the ones that and you've watched me do this. I need the ideas from you. I'm not the bright ideas guy. I need to know what can I provide? And if the committee tells me no, or the legislature tells me no, that's fine. But I can lay my head on a pillow at night feeling like we made our best effort to protect. And back to the Thermopolis fire, I've got a lot of friends up there, and this one's different than any fire I've ever seen. It's the first time I've seen entire ranches burned out. It's normally you might have one smaller place. These are large ranches, and they have lost everything. The committee will hear me come later on to figure out how we move in. It's not you guys, it's the next step, but how do we help them take care of their livestock, and how do we get fencing done? We saw a preview, and that'll come forward after you folks, but it all ties together somewhat as what we do in these natural disasters. And thank God we've got a crew like you guys. So thank you. And as we did last year, Director Norris, don't be afraid to ask for the moon. The worst you can get is told that we won't dance with you. So I'd encourage you to ask for what you need.
Mr. Chairman, thank you, Senator. I think the county's provided a pretty decent layout and request, and they're the local knowledge on the ground, and I'm here to help support them, because at the end of the day, and they've heard me say this over and over again, we have to maintain what we have out there. And I'm very nervous about us even being able to maintain what we have in these counties when it comes to volunteer firefighters and the equipment and the service that they provide. And however we can help support them and support our state is where we're going to be at. So I think the proposals that the counties have come forward with as solutions should be taken seriously.
Co-Chairman Barrett.
Thank you, Mr. Co-Chair. Forrester Norris, we need to get into this discussion about the federal cutbacks and what the BLM cutting back on their fire crews. I'd like to know, thus far this year, what kind of impacts have you seen from reductions in federal funding?
Hey, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Co-Chairman Barrett, that is a great question. We on the ground haven't seen anything different. I really, when we say all hands, all lands, we mean it. And any of your fire wardens that you would talk to locally will say, whether they're on the east, west, south side of the state, you're going to have your federal partner showing up with you. It's just like it's always been. We have our agreements. We are honoring those agreements that are in place. The federal cuts that have happened have not necessarily hit fire. And that's, I think, what I would say has been the difference. It's been state and private funding. That is something we were watching closely because of the Volunteer Fire Assistance Program and the state co-op fire program. That federal money does come directly to state forestry. We turn around, give the volunteer fire funding directly to, I think we had 42 fire districts. It went to help just support equipment and things like that into those fire districts through that funding. And then the state also receives a significant amount of cooperative federal funding. We believe we've gotten the 2025. We're in the process of getting that work through. There was a due date before DOJ needed to review it. We're getting that work through, so we should have the 2025, and 2026 is unknown yet as Congress works through that.
Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Co-Chair. Not really a follow-up, but a different line of questioning.
Go ahead.
There was an article that came out today in the state news that said that ranchers were feeling helpless in this this fire, the Red Canyon. Oh, it's not Canyon. What is it? The Red Canyon fire. Trying to keep my name straight at all these fires. We've barely touched this in the last meeting, and we really need to discuss when we're talking about policy and whether legislation needs to address it. The conflicts that happen when you're trying to fight fires and suddenly it moves back into life safety because people have gone in and done what they feel is important for their land and their resources, trying to protect them. And you guys are then pulled off the fire to protect that life safety situation. And I am the last one to want to get in the way of ranchers doing what they feel is important with their livelihoods. But is there an idea or a thought for down the road as far as training ranchers on how they can be helpful and what is too far for them to go where it creates a resource problem for the entire conflagration?
We can tag team this one. Mr. Chairman, Co-Chairman Barrett, that is a great question. Yeah, we need to start working on that. And that was pretty apparent at last night's meeting as well. So we had a team that was trying to engage in the fire, and then we get pulled away because there would be entrapments and have to go save, whether they were landowners or oil workers or whoever it may be. I think, again, these fires are moving quickly. They're not the typical fires that I think historically ranchers may or may not be used to. And so then the fire keeps going while we have to save lives. So we do need to start working on coordination. But I think that's when the counties have suggested funding for mitigation, that mitigation is talking about, there's three parts to mitigation, right? There's the planning side, there's the education side, and then there's the actual implementation of mitigation. And I think there's some real key things to think about in there, because that's what you're talking about. It has to do with planning and education. And you got to have the capacity to do that. I think we've done some of that in coordination together, but there's multiple steps that we could still be looking at doing and getting ourselves more prepared for these fires in these situations across Wyoming. And I don't know if you want to add to that.
Yeah, Mr. Co-Chair. Hopefully, effect of it, of reclassifying some positions that were long-term vacant and then getting some more fire trainers. Hopefully, we can start filling that void with those local landowners where maybe they might have been missed before. And then also, especially with some of the fires last year and then even this year in Red Canyon, those were some out-of-state incident management teams that came in. And I'll take it to myself that do a better job of explaining how we do stuff and how business is done in Wyoming, really. Now up at Red Canyon with the incident management team that they're now is it's a Rocky Mountain team, and there's numerous people from Wyoming on that team. So they understand that process. And, hey, we bring those landowners into the operational plan of when you go out there to do your work that day. You have our division soups, talk to them and explain, hey, here's our plan. Here's what we're thinking. And the local folks, those ranchers, they know where you can operate and where you can't, what's good out there on the land, what they can do. So bring them into the plan because, they may have their own bulldozer or road grader out there. So when you utilize that equipment where we can and bring them into, have those conversations and work them in, hey, here's where our plan is. Maybe we can work it together and, help get around the fire.
Senator Guru, and then Senator Driscoll.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thanks again for everybody and the testimony here. And Forrester, this one's for you. Kind of following up on what my friend Senator Driscoll was asking about, retention and all this. Is this a time, and I don't want to jump ahead of your presentation, but, talking about the time between, the volunteers are the first line of defense, but having a strike team, whether it be a summer crew or a full-time crew, a couple of crews then have bolstered by summer hires, but then having people come in on a strike crew so we can tell the volunteers, yes, we need you for that first 12 hours. But when you have to go to work at 5 o'clock in the morning, like the chief was talking about, there's going to be a group coming on board then that can back you up. And is that in and of itself a help to retention, to let the volunteers know that they're not going to be there alone day after day or have to make that decision about going to work versus, walking off a fire. Is this where we should be talking about that piece? And also given the fact that you're talking to what hearing you testify, what was the 100-year fire this year became the 50-year fire, which is now going to become the 10-year fire. It seems like we're heading in that general direction. And I don't want to talk for the rest of the afternoon on why that's happening, but just want to hear your thoughts on all that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to pass this on because I do think this is a county answer, but Senator Grew, I think you're spot on. And I'm going to have the chiefs explain why I think you're spot on.
Thank you, Mr. Co-Chairman. Senator Grew, I think, I mentioned in Gillette, there's only 2 hand crews in the state of Wyoming that are formed up in the spring and they go through the fire season. Those hand crews are in high demand. They're gone. Back to a local control, a state controlled asset. To Senator Grew's point, I have had volunteers on my organization tell me I'm tired of being over relied on. I have to go to work. You can't keep relying on me for day 2, day 3, potentially putting my employment at jeopardy. It does get, that at times they can feel a bit overused to be counted on. If you don't stay, then who else is coming? And sometimes the answer is nobody else is going to come, or it's going to be inadequate. So I would agree with Senator Grew's assessment that it is a piece of that, for sure, retention part of being a volunteer firefighter, knowing that the organization still supports you going to work to fill your obligations, and we have a solution coming the next day to help you out.
Mr. Chairman, thanks for the opportunity to respond to Senator Grew. I did want to, I agree wholeheartedly. I do think that's one of the many solutions that will help with recruitment and retention. I wanted to circle back and hit on, there's been several comments made. Funding's a big part of it. The State Land Investment Board helping out with, purchasing fire trucks and equipment and personal protective equipment. And those are things that are going to help too. We certainly need all the help we can get there. Regional capacity was one thing I really wanted to hit on. I think we heard a couple of questions about the availability of the busters. They're in Newcastle, which is a long ways away from Sublette County. And it takes a long time to get there to make that difference. It might be a day or two. And there's a significant amount of logistical support to go behind them that I'm just not able to provide. So another recommendation would be to regionalize the increased capacity that we're suggesting to put under the Wyoming State Forestry Division. It's really important that we have some state resources available in every corner of the state to quickly respond and take over at that 5 a.m. or whatever the time frame is. And then there was one additional question Representative Barrett asked about engaging with the communities, and I wanted to hit on one of the solutions. So in the Pocket Creek fire that I provided a description of, I love seeing the tank drive by. In the Pocket Creek fire, unfortunately there was one home that was lost in the middle of that fire. A devastating loss for the homeowner. That I spoke to the husband and wife, and he spent over 40 years building that home with his own 2 hands. It was an unbelievable loss and just absolutely devastating. But there was multiple other homes that were protected in that same subdivision. And afterwards, after the chaos of initial attack, I went up there and I shook the hands of every resident that I could meet with, and I asked them to join the volunteer fire department. And we did get one additional volunteer from that community that actually was very appreciative of the work that our volunteer organization put into protecting their property, and has now got an application to join our volunteer fire department. So that's one of many solutions, as I think get involved with your community, figure out a way to volunteer and help in whatever capacity that is. I know every fire department in the state would certainly, welcome an application, and we need additional volunteers. And plus, I mean, that's what's the strength of our organization is we've got carpenters and welders and ranchers and everybody in between that is, up on our roster, and they all bring different perspectives, but that local perspective of the people that are part of our communities brings a lot of value when we're making decisions about how to fight these fires.
Okay, Senator Ogden, Driscoll, I definitely want to recognize, and then we could go on. I need
Thank
to
you,
stay
Mr.
on
Chairman.
schedule. So Senator Driscoll, please.
Yeah, I'll try to keep it reasonably brief. And it kind of went back to, we had an answer of landowners. Sometimes they have a dozer, a blade, or equipment. And I was curious, one, do they have to be certified firefighters, particularly when we go to federal fires? I think I know the answers to these because I've kind of been around them. And second, what's the liability coverage or the coverage if they happen to burn up equipment? What's kind of the process? The last part of the follow-up, and I know this has happened in numerous fires the last couple of years, and I've been on some on my place, same way. What's the legality of landowners coming back in after they've been asked, as far as, you're just never going to keep people that own property and land off of it. And what's the process, and what should we be doing to, one, try to encourage them not to be there probably, but second, if they are, release everybody from liability if you can't get there? Because I'm one of the ones, if your house is in a flood and it's washing away and they tell you to evacuate and you don't evacuate, I personally don't think you ought to waste a whole lot of time trying to save you. That sounds cruel, but those are personal choices. And I think you ought to always, as a landowner, have the right to be there. But I'm not sure that you should have to be rescued if you get in trouble. So follow up on a question that probably doesn't have an answer, but I'd kind of like to hear. Thank you. Thank you, Mr.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, Senator, they would, for like responding to a federal fire, yes, they would need to, there are certain qualifications they would have to meet, or trainings that to NWCG qualified is kind of the baseline standard for federal response. And we try to have that and meet that within the state. But if it's on your own property, that's where I'm saying we just need to work with those folks and bring them into the fold. They may just stay on their property, but it's just, we just got to work with everybody, and especially with the evacuations of asking people to leave, it's where that communication goes back to, make sure we are talking to them and be polite, be polite and considerate with it, because it's a big impact to them as well, So, work with them, explain the reason why they need to leave, and hopefully we can if it works together, then we can get them back in as quickly as possible as well.
And Mr. Chairman, I can add a little bit more on the loss. So I don't have a good answer for you. If it's on their own property and they're taking independent action, I think it's going to be on that landowner. I think that is a concern, and Campbell County can probably speak. Both the counties will probably speak to a lot of this. I'm going to pass this off to them too. When we have fires, especially in your neck of the woods, we will sign up contractors during emergency contracts, and we do that. Most of them are have heavy equipment for businesses, especially in that area. They have to have insurance. We go through a whole thing, and they're given direct communication, and there is a heavy equipment person that oversees that piece of equipment, so that there's always a firefighter connected, and oversight is there to help with making sure that there isn't a loss, and making sure that there is liability being covered. And we talk about this even with the insurance engines that show up, making sure that they're checking in with the fire, the IC, everybody knows where everyone is, because when it comes to evacuations, that's when we have incidents within incidents. We had on the Elk Fire, a person that evacuated at a time when we had the counties evacuating at 2 a.m. The fire was rolling into the subdivision. The gentleman stopped and ran over himself. He got out of the vehicle, didn't park it, ran over himself. And we had our firefighters randomly heard him call for help as they were evacuating. And we're able to, without getting burned fully over, get him into a situation and get him evacuated and safe. But those are the type of things that are occurring while a fire is occurring and your firefighters are supposed to be on a fire. So this is something that I think, again, it's capacity. We only have so many firefighters, we only have so many resources. And so this is an educational piece that we're gonna have to work with Wyoming citizens. And I'm going to pass a little bit of this off to the counties because this is something that they are dealing with frequently in the last couple of years. If you want to respond.
You want to go first?
Mr. Co-Chair, I'll be brief. To Senator's point, obviously option one is to sign up, as Forrester Norris said, with the incident. They're under the authority of the incident commander. They're getting direction. We have communications. That's our preferred. Independent action without communication, without direction is going to be very difficult. And I don't imagine a scenario where losses would be covered. To the point about evacuations, when we issue an evacuation, residents in Wyoming, is my understanding, they're not required to leave. We ask them to leave. We can't force them out. If they have a fire on their land, it's their property. They can stay, fight fire. We understand that, but there are obviously hazards that go along with that, and we try to do our best to keep them out of harm's way. But to state Forrester Norris's point, there's only so many of us, and these fires are getting pretty big, and it definitely makes things more difficult.
Mr. Chairman, I'll be very brief as well, but I do want to illustrate just briefly during the Pocket Creek fire, when we were trying to drop the aerial retardant from the seats and the lats, there were one of the lats, the large air tankers, he had to divert away. He was ready to go in and drop his load. And then he got on the radio and he says, I can't drop, there's civilians in the way. And so we had to divert our firefighters away from point protection on the structures. We had to get them on the radio, go back, grab the civilians. Hey, please go back to your homes. We're trying to drop aerial retardant right here where you're at. And it would potentially kill somebody if they were hit by that heavy load. And so we had to redeploy our firefighting resources to help protect the public and then get back engaged again. And it was chaos to try to do that in the middle of fighting fire. So it's an extremely difficult situation. I do think that there's opportunity to clean up the evacuation language in state statute. There's a lot of ambiguity. That's a whole different topic that I don't think we're prepared to address here, but there is some issues there that need some clarity and some coordination.
Thank you, Mr. Co-Chair. I apologize. This is something that I hadn't thought of until this discussion occurred right here, but this may end up being something we bring up in directives for you all for the next meeting if you don't have an answer now. But I think of workers' compensation. If you own a company and you train safety with your employees, you can get lower premiums. So my question is this: do property insurance companies offer discounted rates based on a property owner being trained to work with a fire, the forestry division, the county fire department? And if not, why not? So if we don't know an answer to that right now, I want to add it to the directives that we find out. Are there programs out there? It seems to me if you could get lower premiums on replacing your fence and your cattle, you might be highly motivated to set up some training with your local fire department and get that training done. So that's my question.
Mr. Chairman, Co-Chairman Bear, I'm not aware of insurance companies doing that. I am aware of other states creating grant programs associated with fees that they are charging to landowners for fire protection. And there's a coordination then if the landowner does so much mitigation, education outwork, or the community itself, they in kind, they don't have to pay the fees. So I am aware of that, but I'm not aware of anything specific with the insurance companies. But I can work on that and let you know at another meeting.
Okay. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Appreciate your testimony. What we have next is the wildfire inmate hand crews and Director Shannon. Director Dan Shannon, Director of the Department of Corrections. Good to have you here, sir.
Chairman Salazar, Co-Chairman Bear, committee members. I'm Dan Shannon with the Department of Corrections. Thank you for having me here today. Certainly appreciate it.
Yeah, so please go ahead with your testimony.
During your, I believe it was your June 23rd meeting, the chairman asked that I be present today to answer questions regarding our inmate work crews and things of that nature. I just would like to go over a few things of what we do, what we don't do, or whatever directive this committee so would choose to do so. This program, our inmate smoke jumpers, smoke busters, it's been a program that's we worked very closely with the state forestry for the past 44 years, even before we were a Department of Corrections. It's been a very effective program. One thing that I consistently say, our mission is very clear. It's to create less victims. We don't create less victims by just incarcerating people or supervising them on supervision. We help out in our communities in many ways through assisting with fires and floods and conservation projects, things of that nature, and community details. We've done that for, as I said, for over 44 years. Prior to 2017, we had fire crews at our conservation camp located in Newcastle, as well as our Wyoming Honor Farm located in Riverton. In 2017, the Forestry Division at that time chose to pull that program from the Honor Farm and relocate the additional staffing to Newcastle. And that was prior to Forester Norris, which we worked very closely with. I would just like to go over just a few things and try to answer some questions with that. Some of the comments that were made during the June 23rd meeting, our inmate population has not gone down since 2017. It's actually risen. The inmate work crews have not gotten smaller. They've actually risen since that time. And we are extremely supportive of our forestry crew. A committee member just previously asked a question regarding policy and regarding things of that nature. We have very detailed correctional policies that define how we select these individuals, how they're determined to go onto the program. And over 4 decades of working, we've had very little incidents. Regarding the selection, the fires, training, things of that nature, that's under Kelly's preview. We don't have any input with that. We do have a memorandum of understanding with the Forest Division on how we set things up. We will continue to support however we can. When we go to the program, such like if you said we're going to go, and if Forester Norris had those resources, there's no issue with providing those inmates. I have the inmates available. We will help. We're certainly going to get behind the program and help out in any way we can. So.
Yeah. Senator Larson, and then my co-chairman.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. So do you help train the foresters to take the crew? Is that something the Department of Corrections does?
Mr. Chairman, Senator Larson, we have a training academy that all employees attend. And every Department of Corrections employee attends a correctional training. We do not provide any training regarding. We're not fire experts by no means. I would also, with the chairman's permission, I would also like to discuss why it's not possible to expand the program in Newcastle. Now, the Newcastle program we're running 20 crew members here right now, and that's always been pretty much the same. I think logically you'd say, well, let's expand it, let's place it in different institutions. I met with Forrester Norris, and I'm not here to say it should be in Riverton. That's her expertise. That's not mine. The reason that we can't expand the Newcastle program to say, let's double the Newcastle program, if that's what we're going to do. And in 2020, the legislative body did a bed study. And one thing that the findings were that we were housing inmates out of state. We had a number of vacancy beds within our department, and we weren't utilizing our beds appropriately. And then when I came aboard later that year, we filled our beds. We have a number of programs. We have our female ITU. I created a veterans program. We have our veterans there. I took people. We lowered our intensive treatment beds for substance use from 85 down to 65 that we were paying for every day. I put that program up in Newcastle. So we've never reduced the smoke jumpers' capabilities, but we don't have the ability to enlarge it now because the institution's at capacity.
Yeah, follow up.
Mr. Chairman, thank you again. So you could do it in Riverton? Is that what we're hearing?
Mr. Chairman, Senator Larson, we absolutely can provide the resources in Riverton, but we don't have the resources to provide for staff, for our forestry staff to take individuals out. We don't do that. I wrote a letter to our chairmans regarding some inquiries from June 23rd hearing, and an estimated cost would be about $19,000 per biennium to run a program regarding the Department of Corrections out of Riverton.
Mr. Co-Chair. You follow up? Yes,
Please. 19,000 per individual, or is that just total?
No, per biennium. Per biennium. Mr. Chairman, Senator Larson, that cost would be per biennium to the department. What that would cover is, we learned a long time ago, we had some incidents. This is probably anecdotally 9-10 years ago. Forestry crews would be out. We have a 14-day limit. They can be on that crew for 14 straight days. Then we pull them back for 2 and rest them. Then we send them back out for 14. Years ago, what would take place is wherever they would bivouac and begin fighting the fire the next morning, they would set up tents and stay right there. And the foresters would also sleep with the inmates there. Well, we had some incidents, some inmates were running away and things of that nature. And I really looked into what was going on around the country that had these types of programs. So what we do now is when the forester's done in the evening from 6 at night till 6 in the morning, depending on the work shift, we'll send a correctional officer that'll watch those inmates until morning. And so that way the forester can rest as well. The foresters can rest, the supervisors can rest. So that cost would pay, then that person at 6 in the morning would go and sleep in a room, depending on the location, if we can't drive that distance. So it would be a total cost of around $19,000 per biennium expense.
One more,
Total.
yes.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. So now I guess we need to go to Forrester Norris and ask her what is holding that up to get a whole crew going. What are the dollars there then in personnel?
Yeah, let me, yes, let me go to Co-Chairman Bear, and then you can answer that.
So I just want to go back to the last meeting. We had considerable amount of time. We discussed this issue, not knowing and maybe having some misinformation in that meeting about what the Department of Corrections might be able to or not be able to do. And your letter was very helpful. We need to get that out to the rest of the committee so you guys are aware of that. My apologies. Job got in the way of that, I guess. So, but I had a question about that letter because, as I recall, we have a crew now, the smoke busters, and it's one person short. And yet your testimony in that letter was that you could, if the forestry division did their part, you could man up a second crew. So if that's true, and that's great news, what is the holdup on the one person on the crew that we have, or if you can answer that, please. And I believe the answer to the question that was coming from the good senator is that $19,000 is for the overtime. I think that's what your letter said. So it's just covers all the overtime that crew would, or that Department of Corrections employee would need to be able to watch over those guys at night. I believe that's correct.
Mr. Chairman, Co-Chairman Bear, to answer your question, there is variance so that we can house, we can have 20 workers. And on the 23rd, we had 19. Now we believe we have 20 again. There are inmates that are released in time. The forestry does 2 trainings, and please correct me if I'm wrong, Kelly, 2 trainings a year to get, to do the pack test and things of that nature. In Riverton, we have additional 300 inmates there. And you can't utilize 300 inmates to fight fires. I mean, it's very specific. First of all, who meets the criteria, and then who meets the forestry standards. And if we're down 1 or 2, we'll pick them from Riverton and bus them over to Newcastle to make sure I'm there. If the program was in Riverton, I would have 300 to pick from there. So there may be a variance of 1 or 2 until they're trained and up and running again. But beyond that, it's a capacity. I hope I answer your question.
The Speaker Pro Tem.
Thank you very much. And I appreciate you guys coming, and Director Shannon, thank you for being a part of this. Obviously, as we hear about depletion of our volunteers, because that's our big concern, right? I mean, 24 hours in, we're still usually pretty strong, but not after that. And so these crews are really important after that. So as Director Norris, as you answered the last question and kind of tee this up, my question would be to both you guys, what is our limit? So obviously we've got 1 team. Riverton, we could put more teams. How many more teams? Like, where's the point where we actually topple over and it's like, this is too much of a good thing and now we have a bad thing? Can we talk about that? Yes, 1 more team, maybe more, 2, 3, 4. Like, how many can we facilitate, and where would it come to a point of logistically no longer being an asset?
Mr. Chairman, Representative, while we have 20, we would take 25, we would take 40. There's not a waiting list right now for Newcastle. So while we could possibly look at expansion in Riverton, we are currently open to taking on more right now in Newcastle as well. So when it comes to what is too much, depends on capacity of both of our agencies and how much we're going to have staff to be able to handle all of that. And I think beyond that, I think there's limitations to these crews, and there's very specific use to them, and they fill a very specific need. And they're part of the solution, but there's a greater gap with initial attack, with leadership, and that a module could provide that's different than what the inmate hand crews can provide. And I'll let Mr. Shannon, if you want to answer anything more.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Harrelson, as I said, the count is 20, and it hasn't dropped below. I mean, it drops 1 or 2, but it's never went well below that. And that's the max at Newcastle because there's no more beds available at Newcastle. The bed study, which was asked, where the legislative body asked to look into, we could have expanded it. And I chose not to do that because the cost was $10.5 million per biennium. And I didn't think that was appropriate to have the construction and bring that before the Appropriations Committee. So what I did do was utilize the beds. Now, if it's a directive, I don't know where we'd find these beds within our department. I could move another program, and I could remove an intensive treatment program, veterans program, things of that nature that have been very successful, and it really serves our mission. So we have 5 facilities total, and you say, well, why don't you move one to Rawlins or maybe Torrington and things of that nature? The reason that we select Riverton as well as Newcastle, those are our 2 minimum facilities, and those are the classification of inmates that we can take out with and have with work with this type of equipment and trust that we can be out there for a week at a time fighting a fire. it would be very unreasonable and very risky safety wise if we did that in any other facility.
Mr. Chairman. Follow up.
Thank you. So I'm going to respectfully kind of push a little bit right now. So last time we heard and we talked about inmate crews, it was pretty much, we've got one, there's no way we can have more than one. We just don't have the numbers. This isn't a possibility. And I understand their scope is completely different. I totally understand that. They are not going to be able to do what other hand crews are capable of doing and or other crews are capable of doing. I fully understand that. So I think that probably this is it's tools in a toolbox situation. There is a use for this tool. I fully believe that. My county said put as many crews as physically possible on because there is a use. They said we will take that any day of the week. They're amazing people. We love them. Director Shannon, I fully agree with you. This is the opportunity that we have to give people their life back, right? They've made some dumb decisions and they're into this situation because of their own choices, but we can help them succeed at becoming an asset to our state, right? And so kind of we're hearing two different approaches here. Last time we're like, we just don't know. And I understand that more communications happened. We're exploring these options. But really, I think what we're seeing is, no, we don't want to lose other options in Newcastle. That's not the answer. The answer is, what do we need to do for state forestry and for Department of Corrections? We're hearing $19,000. What do we need to do so we can put a second team online and maybe down the road a third team online, not to replace these module concepts that we're talking about already, but to continue to be an asset to our communities and our counties in doing mop up in these fires.
Okay, well, Mr. Chairman, in your handout, we give you a breakdown of what it would take to, per the request of DOC at the Riverton location. And in my presentation, I'll go through why our feedback on Riverton, but at the very end, what state forestry would need is 5 to 6 full-time employees. We're going to need 3 crew buggies, 2 trucks. We're going to need funding for all our staff and the inmates to provide chainsaws, clothing, and gear. We're going to need to dip it harder into our federal grants to pay for the inmates. We pay extra for those that participate in this program through our grants. So we estimate $2.25 million, $750,000 biennium for employees and $1.5 million for startup. I will be coming back next biennial budget and requesting at least $1 million for replacement of 3 crew buggies that are up in Newcastle. We believe that we are going to take 4 years to establish that program because, as you're going to hear, it takes about 4 years to get the training for a crew supervisor to take out that crew. That's been built into the system in Newcastle. Our module leader has been with us for a significant period of time, moved up in fire qualifications while having WDOC programming.
So are we talking Newcastle or Riverton?
Riverton, for expansion. That's for one additional expansion. It's on page 3. Thank you. Yeah. For Newcastle, for state forestry, it is not going to take much for us. We can continue to take on more inmates at any given time. We welcome that, and we have a program set up there and continue to invest into that program.
Okay, so I want to focus on Riverton for a minute. So 19,000 for the Department of Corrections, but from your end, we're looking at a total on page 3. What's the price tag?
Chairman Salzar, it's going to be $2.25 million.
Biennium.
It's going to be $750,000 a biennium and 1.5 for startup. And it's going to take us 4 years to get there.
Mr. Chairman, no.
Are there any questions for the director? Thank you. Appreciate it very much. Appreciate it. Wildfire mitigation.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes,
I can also present on the Smoke Buster program if you would like.
on the what?
Smoke Buster program, if you would like.
Then let's go ahead.
Okay. All right. I just want to, I appreciate Director Shannon being here, as he even said, WDOC is very supportive of this program, and State Forestry is very thankful for that. So the program has been around since 1989. It's called the Smoke Busters, and it's obviously a very valuable asset to the state of Wyoming. The Forestry Conservation Program staff have undergone reorganization, establishing a year-round fuels and fire suppression team, and that team is really dedicated to fuels reduction and forest management on timberlands. The objective of our FCP program is to furnish Wyoming residents with a skilled and diligent workforce, initiatives focused on wildland fire suppression and all risks, activities, fuels reduction, and natural resource community service. So State Forestry allocates a significant financial resources to train permanent staff responsible for managing inmates who volunteer and meet the qualifications of offsite work program, as Director Shannon has talked about. So staff training encompasses 6 weeks with the Wyoming Department of Corrections Academy for non-uniform staff, fire training to attain certifications of at least firefighter type 1, squad boss, and leadership and management training. The completion of a comprehensive training program requires a minimum of 2 years. A limited number of applicants, typically when we hire, they typically don't possess fire qualifications or corrections experience. So this is it's pretty intensive investment when we hire on these crew supervisors and get them trained in. So recruitment for the crew supervisor position is extremely challenging because it requires all of these knowledge skills, yet compensation is approximately equivalent to starting wage of a corrections officer, yet it lacks a 20-year retirement benefit and guaranteed overtime, rendering less appealing trajectory in comparison to the opportunities within Wyoming Department of Corrections, where those lie. Data indicates that most forestry crew supervisors remain in their positions for less than 4 years. Subsequently, they seek other employment due to the demands that we put on, the mental requirements, and the fire seasons. Furthermore, there is no progressive pay structure for as they achieve additional certifications. And none of our staff have that are out on fire right now. Currently, the Forestry Conservation Program maintains full staffing thanks to the support of Director Dan Shannon and his team. The busters are at full capacity at 20 for a hand crew this year. So as Dan Shannon said, they're focusing on getting the eligibility of those inmates who volunteer and are physically capable. And we talked about the pre-release program. And really the point of that program is this classification of inmates is the most successful in that program. Is they've already proven that they listen to rules and they can work within a system where we can take them out onto high risk, high intense areas with chainsaws and hand tools and be able to help manage as a team. So we hire on these inmates, and we hold pretty high expectations of them. And they tend to live up to that. And when they don't, they are dismissed. The average duration of an inmate participating in the program is 5 months, and this varies significantly based on hiring and release dates. For instance, an inmate can initially be projected for the program for 6 months, and they may depart in 2 months or remain on longer. It's very variable. Of the 22 inmates rostered at the beginning of June, currently the crew consists of 20 inmates. There's just no precise method to how long that cohesion will stay together. Focus and budgetary allocations should really prioritize, from our opinion, strengthening the Newcastle program to mitigate turnover and enhance inmate participation. State Forestry utilizes grant funds to help reflect the physical demands and expectations we put on the smoke busters in inmate wages. However, that funding is through grants, so it's not guaranteed and should really be augmented by general funds to bolster that participation. The establishment of the second-hand crew at the Honor Farm in Riverton has proven to be a challenge in the past to manage, as evidenced by historic performance with the fire wranglers, and that was from 2002 to 2015, as Director Shannon had talked about. In 2015, the program was dissolved. This was prior to my time. But due to competition between the locations for the same pool of eligible inmates, budgetary reductions at the time, and state forestry having staffing difficulties of staffing both. A Riverton crew is going to necessitate year-round work. The nearest timbered state lands are over an hour and a half one way. So that diminishes total productivity, which is what we have out of the Newcastle office during the winter, especially during the winter months. Staffing challenges would also persist at both locations. Trying to hire a qualified fire line crew boss is going to be exceptionally difficult. That's why we put a 4-year timeline and expectations, because again, when we're looking at these positions, the prospective candidates that would come from maybe federal agencies are fire focused, and they demand higher wages than state forestry. They want to see a 20-year fire pension. They want to see the 20-year retirement, and typically don't apply because there's not growth as you in funding and pay as you acquire more qualifications. Overall, the inmate program has, as we talked about, has limitations to certain functions performed by the civilian fire modules. The inmates are prohibited from air travel to remote locations and overnight stays such as spike camps, nor can they operate on their own on a fire logistically. They must be supported by the ordering agency. The inmate crew cannot be pre-positioned, cannot be available for initial attack from work sites, nor can they be hoteled up during adverse weather conditions. The majority of these restrictions have to do with the program itself, as we talked about. And furthermore, when we look at developing or supplementing a crew with higher class inmates, as Director Shannon had said, we would really argue against that. It would make it even more difficult to manage that type of program. And it would probably negatively impact the crew's morale, and could be a real risk to safety and security. So we just went through the Joint Appropriations Committee requested State Forestry to provide information on what it would take to expand the inmate hand crew program. Per Director Shannon, Riverton makes sense, as he explained, for DOC. State Forestry would need to, as we went through, 5 to 6 additional full-time employees. We'd need 3 more crew buggies, 2 more trucks. We'd need to purchase quite a bit of equipment for our staff and for the inmates. And we would need to dip much deeper into our grants to help pay for some of these things. Again, we believe it would cost $2.25 million, a total of $750,000 per biennium for employees, and $1.5 million for startup for the equipment and vehicles. And we believe it's going to take us 4 years. A compelling alternative resides in the establishment of a seasonal civilian workforce. This model offers several distinct advantages that could significantly enhance state forestry's fire response efficiency, financial viability, and overall impact. The county's proposed modules could create a crucial pathway for former smoke buster participants who have successfully completed that program. It would permit these individuals to apply for positions within the seasonal civilian crew upon post-release. This opportunity would obviously be contingent upon strong recommendations from our module leaders and program staff and DOC, ensuring that these individuals would have demonstrated dedication, skill, and commitment, and should to be considered. So there's a structured career path if we were to go into civilian modules that we could create. And this would, we believe, truly create an increase in recruitment for that smoke buster program, because they would see a legitimate career path to go beyond. Right now, when they come out of the smoke buster program, they don't have anywhere to go. We hear from them, and they're wanting to come back. And work with us in fire, because he's part of a fire community, yet this could create that for them. And we believe in your handout, we laid out all the reasons why we believe that the civilian module could create a whole new career path for the smoke busters. And with that, I will open it up for any questions that the committee may have, unless you had anything more to add, Director Shannon, to my comments. No.
Questions? Any questions? Yes, Director.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, our state forester was well spoken in her commentaries. I just had a couple schools of thought, however, to have a specific longevity of time for training, and this would deal with the finances of how we would how we could pay for this. The Department of Corrections doesn't incarcerate or release. So we have to follow the Board of Probation and Parole, which is separate from our department. So an individual that we could say could have a year coming up could very well be released in 6 months. They go to the program, they have to be less than 2 years of their release. They can go to the facility day, but these types of programs have to be within 2 years. So that really leaves it subjective to the Board of Parole. I'm certainly not opposed to any type of civilian work. I mean, education, housing, and work is the key to make people successful in our communities. The problem, well, I wouldn't consider it a problem. One thing that we need to consider is when that person is in an alternative community, and State Forester Norris and I discussed this several times. I'm very supportive of that. Two schools of thought. One would be we're still subjective to the Board of Parole. That person can be pulled at any time. And then number two, we would also be asking several county fire departments to change their policy on who can participate. So that's something we'd have to consider. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I stand for questions.
You know, the one comment I'll make is, as we look at this, obviously, we're looking at the price tag and what do we get? I know that this testimony is going to be thought out very intently by this committee with regard to which direction we go on this. Other questions? Anyone else? Do you have anything besides what we've just heard?
No, Mr. Chairman. I would just add, when we're talking about civilian workforce, we're talking about civilian workforce within state forestry. There's nothing limiting to us, because what Mr. Shannon's talking about is right now why there's nowhere to go is because of the counties having regulations against hiring felons, but the state does not. And we've looked into that. And one of the other things we've been working with and have had meetings with Rocky Mountain Youth Corps, which is another program who has an internship program currently in Wyoming with the U.S. Forest Service Medicine Bow Route Thunder Basins, as well as with all BLM in Wyoming. And they do internships in natural resources, fire, forestry, rec. It's another area that state forestry is trying to see, is there a program, because we spend a significant amount of time training the smoke busters. When they come out, they are red carded, they are trained, they are ready to go. They know how to run chainsaws. Natural resources needs these type of people working for us. So again, the federal agencies do not also have those type of restrictions of hiring. And so that is another avenue we are trying to make connection with for future. It is also an internship into those type of programs. And so it's not just having to be fire, it could be rec.
Okay, any other questions? You know, as prerogative of the chair, I think what I'm going to do is take the break now instead of at 3. And instead of a 10-minute break, I'd like a 15-minute break. So we'll come back in 15 minutes. Thank you. Thank you, Karen. So we're back from the break, and the next item up for our discussion is wildfire mitigation. And Bob Budd, Executive Director of the Wyoming Wildfire, Wildlife and Natural Resources Trust, thank you for being here. With that, please take it away.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Co-Chairman, members of the committee. I sent you a report which gave you kind of the nuts and bolts on this a week or 10 days ago. As you know, we've had an ongoing effort to combat invasive annual grasses, particular cheatgrass, going for the last decade, actually the last 20 years. In 2020, the governor had a task force of 32 experts come together and deliver a report on the threats and associated with that. That led to a lot of preventative efforts. Those were not totally effective for the primary reason that the chemical that was being used did not have the effectiveness that we now have, and it had secondary effects. My board chose not to fund those efforts after about 2 attempts because of the failure rate. However, the indaziflam, which we're using now, has been a game changer, and it's been difficult because first we couldn't get approval to use it on BLM lands. That's been done. Then we couldn't get approval to use it with aerial spraying on forest lands. That's now been done. So we now have the ability to treat cheatgrass. If I could, I want to take just a moment, talk a little bit about the history of this invasion. I know, Senator French, you'll remember this from your commissioner days when we all said, oh, we're immune to cheatgrass because of our elevation, or we're immune to cheatgrass because it gets colder here than it does in Nevada and Idaho, or fire will replace cheatgrass, or the grazing eliminates cheatgrass. Every one of those has been proven to be wrong. None of those were correct. Instead, cheatgrass adapts very quickly, as most plants do, as it continues on, and we end up with an infestation. It almost acts like a keystone species where it alters the environment to suit itself and nothing else. And I'd relate, it's interesting that one of the fires, the sleeper fire that is ongoing up in Park County, the manager of the ranch that fire is on came from Nevada, and we were out 2 weeks ago, and he told the group, he said, we thought cheatgrass was no big deal because there were other grasses in with it. And then it burned one time and it came back and the other grasses were gone and it was just cheatgrass. And we thought, well, it still has some redeeming qualities. It's not all that bad. And then it burned again. And he said, and then it burned again. And now there's nothing but mineral soil. Nothing will grow when it's allowed to run its course. So it's a fire-loving plant. It loves fire. It'll kick off 1,000 or more seeds per plant when it's done. It's windborne, and it is a threat to our basic economic driver, which is our landscapes and our grasslands. We have the opportunity to get ahead of that. We have the opportunity to restore rangelands, woody draws, riparian woodlands, and others, and build resilience in our system. What I was asked to do in the last few months was address that issue, the risk issue, and try to do the treatments so that we don't have this turn into the recurring nightmare that you see in states in the Great Basin. I was a little amazed at how quickly we were able to get this done. We put out a request for proposals in the middle of March as soon as the legislation went into effect, gave our county partners 15 days to respond with proposals, which they did. We then vetted that with a group of experts to look at whether or not we thought they were valid. We ran it past the attorneys to make sure it fit the letter of the legislation. Some did not. We met locally in Thermopolis, Buffalo, Gillette, and Wheatland, and sat down with people and said, you know, what are your plans? Went through those. And we had these grants in place in June. That saved, we think, that saved about $3.5 million because the price of the product went up at the end of that period. So we were able to do that. Since that time, one of the other key elements that was funded is the surveillance portion. That's been ongoing since probably April or May in all of the areas where we had those fires of 2024. That's in the report that I gave you. I won't go into that in detail. You can look at the mapping. You can look at what's there. That fine tunes where the treatments will take place. In addition, what we've done is there are other groups have done the surveillance on restoration. So there's a map in there that shows you a number of draws that the erosion potential is extremely high. Those are already being treated with what are called Z-dike structures and others to capture that erosive material, stabilize those draws. That's also being done on the Elk Fire in Sheridan County. Those kind of things are now currently coming back. In fact, I have a meeting tomorrow morning in Representative Haraldson's district to talk about restoration with their local folks and retreatment. The short version of this is that we have a very good handle on the areas that need treated. Those treatments will start probably any time now. That's going to be primarily Johnson, Sheridan, Campbell County. Those treatments start now because this is the window you want to hit with that chemical. You've given all of your native grasses a competitive advantage throughout the spring and summer. They're now senescent. You're not going to harm them. You go ahead and do the treatment. That's a pre-emergent. That will kill the seed from the cheatgrass. And then in the spring, we'll know about retreat, areas we missed. There's probably all of these efforts rebuilt in a retreatment because in about 4 years to 5 years on most, it's incumbent to do the retreatment. If you don't do that, you've wasted the money you put in the first time. So 4 years of the life of the chemical, 4 to 5 years of the life of the seed. You want to be sure in that retreat year that you don't have any latent seeds that are left there that can kick you back to where you were. I would like to point out that this is a collaborative effort. There are a number of state agencies, but more importantly, county entities that are critical. The point of the spear is our weed and pest districts, our conservation districts, some of the NGOs that are working in these areas. They're the ones on the ground. They're the ones getting the mapping done in combination with the University of Wyoming. They have done a stellar job. And I hear from them weekly as to what they're finding. We get, again, it's in the report. You can see some of the mapping that's been done. At this point, we've spent $36.5 million of the $49.5 million that was allocated. The other, we held back a little bit at the beginning to see what the surveillance led us to. I've already heard from Johnson County on the fire there that they have more acreage than what they estimated. So they will probably be back to ask for an additional funding. And then we haven't funded hardly any of the restoration piece, whether that be reseeding or erosion control. And so I fully expect that 49.5 will be fully allocated by the end of the year. So, Mr. Chairman, that's a very quick overview. I think I'd be better served to answer questions if you have them than to try and expect what they might be. So I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Questions? Anyone have any questions? Senator Driscoll, Senator Guru, any questions? Senator Driscoll?
Not particularly. Thank you very much for what you do. Probably
Anything?
my one question would be,
Yes.
if we chose to try to use some funds to help relieve a little bit of what's going on a couple of the fires right now, is there a legality for us to be able to move in there and take some of that money and backfill it for you in the budget? I'm thinking as far as, we've burned numbers of ranches up around Red Canyon, maybe some others that probably have no feed whatsoever for cows and might be in a short-term deal. Is there a way we could possibly use some of those funds yet to be spent? How quick will they be spent, and what would be the potential impacts of that?
Mr. Chairman, Senator Driscoll, the way that I read the amendment to the bill, it would be precluded. It is for ecological restoration and treatment of invasives. In addition to that, We do have funding in our regular budget, which we may be able to look at. But that was some of the money, as I said in the report, that was cut off when we didn't get the supplemental budget passed. So we did not receive that 11 million. We're all kind of caught between what we have available and what we're probably going to need. I would say that the Red Canyon fire, as an example, is an add-on to what we've already got. You'll recall we asked for 100 million for that biennial period, and 49.5 is what we ended up with. So I think we're going to be short either way we look at it.
Very good. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Great answer.
Senator French.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a comment. We've dealt with cheatgrass, and man, once it gets up there and dries out, it's like gasoline. I mean, you touch a fire to it and it just explodes. It's incredible. And I have seen cheatgrass in super dry years get that tall and have a seed on it.
Yeah.
Reproduce, and it's only that tall. So just a comment.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, that is exactly one of the reasons that I think we want to be on top of this. This is, and we've talked about mitigation. Mitigation comes in two forms. One is the things you do before the damage occurs, and the other is what you do to mitigate the damage that occurred. I work a little bit in both of those worlds. So when we're doing cheatgrass treatment, we're actually setting our landscapes up to be resilient against fire. When you look at the way, and I looked at some of the fire behavior as I came up and I talked with Forrester Norris, when that stuff gets in cheatgrass, it is like gasoline. And it's an unbelievably resilient plant. It will take the last moisture that's in the soil, grow 3 inches, and still produce seeds by the hundreds or thousands. And so it's not something where you can go in and just say, yeah, we're going to take a stab at it, or you've got to treat it at a landscape scale, and you've got to stay on it if we want to preclude the kind of things that we've been seeing.
Anyone else with any comments, questions? Nothing? Okay. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate you being here. Thank you so much. Volunteer firefighter benefits. Can I ask Mr. Swindell to come up? Executive Director of the Wyoming Retirement System. Mr. Applegate, both of you. Appreciate you both, all three of you being here. For the benefit of the audience watching, maybe you can all introduce yourselves.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm David Swindell. I'm the Director of the Wyoming Retirement System. And I'm joined by Lanny Applegate. It's Larry Applegate on your agenda, but he's the better guy. Lanny's, kind of the substitute. He serves as the Vice Chairman of the Volunteer Firefighter Pension Board. I have two boards that I work for, the Wyoming Retirement Board and the Firefighter EMT and Search and Rescue Board. As you know, Mr. Chairman, I need a lot of supervision. Mr. Chairman, I'd like to also welcome Senator French to the committee. Being appointed as a liaison to the Wyoming Retirement System turned out to be not all that bad. It led to other things. So, and Representative or Senator French, we welcome you. I know that this meeting is conflicts with a board meeting that's in Sheridan tomorrow. So, but we'll get you to a board meeting. Thanks for your service, sir.
So please go ahead.
Want me to? So, Mr. Chairman, we put in your packet a short memorandum with some information on the volunteer firefighter, EMT, and search and rescue pension plan, because it was mentioned in your last meeting about this topic that maybe some improvements could be made to subsidize the contributions further and so on. The short answer is, well, maybe, but it may not be the best use of your money, the highest and best use. We'll discuss that. But the memo on the front page just gives the committee some basic information about the plan. It's been around since 1967, by the way. We have about 1,781 pensioners. The average benefit is $364 a month for service in the volunteer service of about 21.6 years. The formula, and this may be something the committee wants to remember, is a fixed dollar formula. It's not based upon highest average salary of wages. There are no wages. These are volunteers. And so the formula is $16 per month for the first 10 years of service, and the benefit is $19 per month for service over 10, and you're eligible for that lifetime benefit at age 60 as long as you have 5 years of service. And so that's the basic benefit. The plan's actuarially sound. We're about 96% funded. This plan has assets of about $123 million actuarially, about $126,000 in the market. It's not at 100% funded, but eventually it will get there. It's growing. And you can see the flows in the financial statements. We paid out, this plan paid out about $8 million in benefits last year. Almost all of that, most of that stayed in the state of Wyoming and went to Wyoming zip codes. So we were asked a few questions. Because the formula is set up, this plan is financed through two sources. The first source is member contributions, $18.75 a month for firefighters. And then the state of Wyoming allocates a portion of the state fire insurance premium tax. 60% of that goes to this fund. That's about $4 million a year. So about $500,000 comes in from members and $4 million comes in from the state. But it's the member contribution, we treat it as a member contribution, but it's forwarded by their agencies. So the question is, how many of these agencies are actually subsidizing and paying it on behalf of the members? We don't really know that because we don't need that information to administer the benefit. We only collect information that we really need. But we did a survey, and in the July survey, 85% of the agencies responding said they were subsidizing that benefit. So we call it a member benefit, but it's really being paid for in the most cases by the agency, just so you know. And then we're asked about participation because unlike other pension plans, participation in the pension is voluntary. You can be a volunteer firefighter and not be in the pension. So how many are in the pension? Again, we don't really know that. We only know the people that are enrolled, but we did some survey work. We think about 80% of the volunteer firefighters participate in the pension. The other 20% don't participate for a variety of reasons. Perhaps they are unwilling or unable to meet the attendance requirements. To be a member of the pension, you have to attend at least half of the monthly meetings every year. Or perhaps you're a new person, you're on probation, because some departments pay the pension fee, but they only do that if you're going to show up. You need to prove that you're going to show up over some probationary period. I think, Lanny, it varied in your departments over time. It's a decision of the chief. 6 months to a year, not atypical. Or some folks just, there's, some differences in maybe agency education and emphasis. But anyway, we think about 80%. We were asked if paying more of the member contributions would help volunteer recruitment. Maybe, but probably not. It's already pretty modest. It's $18.75 a month, and 85% of the agencies already pay it. If the state were to pick up a lot more of that, I guess that'd be helpful to the agencies, but I don't know if it changes recruitment that much, to be quite frank. The pension is a good benefit, but it's probably better as a retention tool than a recruiting tool. Most people don't sign up to be a volunteer firefighter because of the promise of a pension 21 years hence. Once you get into it, maybe that starts to have a little more bite to it. So more of a retention tool. Would increasing the benefit help volunteer retention? Eventually, yes, probably, but it's likely modest at first, I think. You should be aware, the committee should be aware at some point the benefit does need to increase. And it's going to have to be a manual increase because there isn't any highest average salary thing going on here, right? Highest average salary does move generally with inflation, but the $16 is fixed, the $19 is fixed. And we used to say, well, it's not a big benefit, but if you volunteer for 20 years, hey, at least it's a truck payment. Have you seen truck payments lately? It really has fallen off the radar screen, and that benefit will need to be sustained. The board cannot recommend a benefit change either for retirees as a COLA or for new retirants unless they're 100% funded. That's the law. Plus a measure to account for market fluctuations. So right now, the benefit's going to stay the way it is until we grow out of it.
So let me ask you, so Lanny or Mr. Swindell, either one, what would be the average monthly retirement check that someone is looking at over once they've retired?
Once, Mr. Chairman, once they reach age 60, whether they've got 20 years on and retired from their department, or they have 40 years on a department, doesn't matter. The average is about $364.
And that's for average service of 21.6 years.
But I know people who have been on there for 40 years and just because they're dedicated, you know, they want to be there.
So, Mr. Chairman, our primary.
So does that amount go up if you've served 30 years, 40 years, or is it all the same? Is it the same amount regardless of 21 years or 50 or 40 years?
Mr. Chairman, it'll go up for each year of service. At service over 10 years, that'd be $19 a month more for each year of service over that. So I think the maximum benefit in the system, there's some people with a lot of, there's some $734 checks going out. But the average is $364, and there's some that are just $100. Well, actually, yeah, $100. So anyway, our primary recommendation probably with the pension is stay the course. The pension will become fully funded, and the board at that point can start to consider some benefit increases. From the testimony you've heard from everybody else, because it's not just about the pension, it's about getting the work done. I mean, we share a military background. Firefighters kind of like that. We got into this because we wanted to win. And so I think the committee's best use of money is to provide the financial resources to enable our firefighters to win on the ground. Having said that, retirement is a benefit. It does help retain quite a bit. And eventually, we do need to be in a position to financially afford a modest benefit increase. The good senator from Devil's Tower area said, well, when you get up here, ask for what you need. Ask for the moon. You might not get it, but let us know what the issue is. Mr. Chairman, it would take $5 million to fully fund the pension system and bring it to 100% funding today. It would take another $13 million to give it a 10% buffer to raise it to 110% for a total of another $18 million. I don't know if that's the highest and best use of $18 million. However, be aware of one thing, it's not the worst use, and we will grow it because we will invest it. Well, one of the other charges of this committee is to monitor the Wyoming retirement system overall. Mr. Chairman, I'm pleased to report that at the year ended 30 June, for the last year, we earned 12.13%. That ranks in the 7th percentile of competing or peer pension funds, and as a really good result, we beat our benchmark and beat peer systems. So whatever money you give us, we grow.
So $5 million fully funds the pension fund.
Yes, that would bring you to 100% funded.
Okay.
Unless the market drops tomorrow, but of current status. With that, Mr. Chairman, Lanny and I are here to answer any questions. One more thing I wanted to mention to the committee. There's been some testimony here from State Forestry about the potential for adding some full-time firefighters to their agency. Whatever that occurs, they probably ought to be in the Fire B paid fire pension plan. The definitions in that plan right now don't envision state employees, and it would need to be an addition to the statute there. The current statute says you're in Fire B if you're a full-time firefighter for a city, a county, a fire protection district, and on. And there's nothing in there about state forestry or any state department. So just be aware of that if we go down that route. It's not a big deal, but it's a technical thing that could trip folks up. Because if they're a full-time firefighter paid for for it, yeah, they should be in Fire B.
Mr. Chairman, I just want to go back and regress a little bit on on the recruitment part. You know, if we went back 20 years ago, 30 years ago, this pension was not only huge now, but it was huge back then. That certainly was a recruitment tool by any means. But now that we've got 85% of the members in it, it's more retention is certainly more important today than the recruitment part. But that's not to say that recruitment's not important, because there's still a lot of smaller departments that take every advantage they can to get their local people on that department. We're not seeing the same numbers today as we did yesterday. When I went to get on, I got on a department back in 1975. I had 2.5 years of waiting period before they even consider me. Today, they're striving and fighting everything they can to get 1 or 2 members applications in. So it's changed drastically over the years. One of the other things I want to just briefly mention, means we're talking numbers. This was sent to me by a bean counter, CPA. The inflation rate from July 1st, 1967, that's when this pension started. From 1967 to July 31st, 2025 is approximately 867% inflation rate. And we all know that we're not even anywhere close to that. The average annual inflation rate today is about 3.9%. So if you have a notion to increase the benefits, take that $16 and $19 up a little bit to help people out and maybe try to bring us hope. I'll be the last person to stand here and say the legislature hasn't helped us over the years. I'll be first in line to say you have. You've helped us a lot. And I appreciate that. And the volunteers appreciate that. So, but anything you can do to help us out, we certainly appreciate it.
Well, we certainly appreciate what you do. Co-Chairman Bear.
Thank you, Mr. Co-Chairman. Vice Chairman Applegate, you bring up a great point, inflation. I don't think any of us anticipates the federal government stopping printing money. So that's probably not going to go away anytime soon. But Director Swindell, what kind of efforts are we seeing within your department of trying to move toward a defined contribution rather than a defined benefit? Are we moving anywhere toward that, or are we still sticking with pensions? Is there any effort to try to shore up our system where the legislature doesn't have to keep coming back to shore it up with more taxpayer dollars?
Mr. Co-Chairman, members of the committee, the Wyoming retirement system administers whatever pension plan is designed in state statute. Whether some people think it's a good plan or a bad plan, at some point we have to be agnostic. We do have a education program to advise folks that the pension will not meet all of their needs. We have not paid a cost of living allowance to any retirees since 2008. And so the effort is to bring all the pension funds to full funding. We have 2 that just achieved that, by the way, the judicial plan and the Fire B plan. But it will take more time after that for those funds to grow to be able to afford a COLA, because we have to have an allowance to pay for the benefit increase as well as a fluctuation for market fluctuations to maintain those planes above 100%, even in the face of a market fluctuation. So no COLAs since 2008, none in the near term. To meet that difference, we educate our folks that they need to participate in the voluntary 457 savings program and supplement their pension and Social Security with a personal savings. And we have a department that focuses on that. The legislature has been helpful in some elements of plan design. In 2016, for new state employees, they are automatically enrolled at 3% of wages. And this takes advantage of behavioral economics. People go with the flow. A new person being hired is focused on their job. They're not focused on all their benefits. And we know that if the default is you got to fill out some paperwork and enroll in the plan, they get to it later and later and later, and they never really wind up doing what they need to do. We are focusing our efforts on our local employers because the public employee plan, for example, is only 20% state employees, 80% local. We have teachers, we have city people, county people. We want them to adopt this best practice as well, to have automatic enrollment. Now, people can get out, but once you put them in, I mean, the stick rate's like 96 or 97%, Mr. Chairman. So, I mean, that's the right method to get people to save. And I will predict that 20 years from now, because average service in the PE plan is about 20 years. So we're looking at 2036. There are going to be some people in the state of Wyoming that signed on as state employees that really just went with the flow. And although it's not a huge sum of money, this is the most money they've ever had in a lump sum, and it's sitting in their account. And we did that because of plan design that the legislature agreed to. At the time that was done, that was unusual for a public entity. It was unusual, especially for a conservative state, to say that we're going to do this because it sounds kind of paternalistic, right? We're kind of reluctant to do that. It served as a model for some other states. When Wyoming was willing to do it, a number of other states were also willing to do it. And that now has become pretty much prevailing practice amongst these defined contribution plans. So that's that story. One thing that the state could consider doing to enhance that, just so you know, is right now there is a state match. It's $20. It's been that way since we took over the plan from the Treasury Department in 2002. We have, I think, 900 employees that are doing the minimum. And again, behavioral economics. If that was the plan, I need to put in $20, I'll put in $20. Well, that's not going to help. That's not going to achieve a retirement outcome of any significance. So instead, probably what we ought to look at in the future is doing away with a $20 match and instead substituting it with a match on a percentage of pay basis over and above 3%. One policy might be if the committee is going to consider any compensation increases in form of responding to inflation, because most employees haven't had a raise for several years, a couple of years, really 3 years it's going to be. The structured in a way, well, maybe 0.5% of pay you get if you contribute 0.5% over 3. In other words, you contribute 3.5%, we'll put in 0.5%, now you're at 4. That starts to be more useful. It really needs to get to 5 or 6, but you got to grow this thing. But think about how we can structure the existing state match for state employees in a better way to send a different signal and tell them that $20 isn't enough. We're not going to match that. But we're going to match something useful, and that's something a little more than 3%. That might be helpful. It doesn't cost you that much money either. We can run the numbers on it. The other thing to bear in mind about switching the base benefit to a defined contribution plan. I could go on a long time about the differences in the plan and transferring risk and all that stuff. People on the Capital and Finance Committee already heard that speech. But you do need to be aware that with the plan is not currently fully funded. We're doing better, but it's still only 80% funded, and we're $2.5 billion short present value of the money we need to pay the benefits we've already promised. We will get there over time. The fund is growing. The contribution rates are correct. They meet actuarial standards. Finally, this legislature did pass House Bill 83 2 years ago to fix the contribution rates. So we will get there. But if you put new employees into a DC plan, it upsets that funding mechanism. For a while, you'll be okay. But we've modeled it. You'll coast from 80%, you go to 84%, and then you'll start to decline. In 20 years, you'll be back to 80%, and then that slow decline turns into a dive. You will eventually exhaust the fund as the benefits continue to be paid out, but the contributions from the old employees just start to melt away. And in the end, the plan pancakes in 2062. So if you were ever to do that, you've got to find a way to fully fund the plan. If you're not going to do it with increased contributions and the amortization component of new employees coming in, then you have to be a method. I'm not saying there isn't one, but base method would be write a check for 2.5 billion. But there are other methods, but that's the first thing. And that is the fiduciary obligation of the board to make sure that we pay the benefits we promised. So that's an obstacle.
So I'm gonna, yeah, if you could, I'd like to, if you could run the numbers on 3%, I'd like to see that eventually at some point. Co-Chairman Bear?
Sorry, Co-Chairman, to get us off basis here. I'll let us get back here quickly, but Director, you mentioned 1962 at Pancakes, but you also have a falling off of members that are receiving the benefits. Has that ever been modeled out to find out, what the true cost would be rather than $2 billion based on attrition from the program?
I'm not sure, Mr. Co-Chair, if I fully understand the question. When I said the plan Pancakes in 2062, I mean, it has zero money in the bank and it still owes $8.1 billion. So is that the number you're looking for, is what was left? Yeah, 8.1 in current 2062 dollars, not present value, 2.5 billion.
Okay, questions? Anyone? Questions, comments? Anyone? No questions?
Mr. Chairman.
Anything? Yes, Senator Driscoll.
Just a quick one, a huge thank you. It's incredible. You talk about what the cliff is. Without the returns you folks have done, it'd be so much worse, and much, much appreciated. It might be helpful a little to look at some rough actuarial tables on some of that that you're looking at for options. It's almost irresponsible for us not to look at these 80% funded funds and look at what we're going to do going forward. Otherwise, we're pushing it down the road. So if you could put together a little something on paper for us, I don't want to wildly burden you, but kind of give us a look at a few different scenarios of the way the impacts might be, it would be much appreciated. And once again, thank you. Your guys' returns have been stellar for all the time I've been in. It's made a huge difference.
Yes, please.
Mr. Chairman, I just want to make note that the number of different agencies that belong to the vol plan is about 125, give or take a couple. Does that sound right?
123.
123, that's give or take a couple. And if you look on page 3 of your handouts, you'll see a list of every one of the communities that belong to it. So I'll give you a good idea that the support you have back home, that helps you and it helps us.
Perfect. Follow up,
Thank you
Mr.
again.
Chairman.
Thank you. Yes,
Follow up.
please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Are we allowed to vary the contribution rates when you talk about all the funds? So if we bumped just the volunteer fire one, can we do that under statutes, or require a change? Because if you move one and give one thing, we ran into that with fireman A and B. Do we create conflicts, and can we do it?
Do you have the answer?
Mr. Chairman, Senator Driscoll, the $18.75 contribution rate is established in statute, so the legislature could change that. The legislature could also provide more flows into the fund, but I wouldn't recommend changing the percentage with the fire insurance premium plan, because Fire A is dependent upon their 40% share. And I've already had some discussions with the Fire A folks that were here for the 2022 session and maybe the 2014 session. Senator Driscoll was here for both of those. May remember all of the angst over Fire A. And I don't think we want to kick that cow pie.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, please.
I'd like to make a note.
Yeah.
From the volunteer sector of it, we don't want Plan A messed with either. Yeah, legislature worked hard to get it where it's at today. There's a lot of money put in there to help them out. And yeah, we're down to 60% and we used to be 100%. But you guys helped make us whole there again, to some degree. And, so whatever you do, leave Plan A alone. That's all I'd say from the volunteer side.
Okay, thank you for your comments. Anything else from the committee? Thank both of you. Appreciate it. Appreciate both of you. Well, we're nearing the end. I definitely want to entertain public comment on what we've been discussing today. Karen, is there anyone online? No one's online. If anyone would like to give public testimony, please come up. We'd like to hear from you. Just introduce yourself, and if you represent a group, and please, we want to listen.
Mr. Chairman, Co-Chairman, and committee members, my name is Glenn Janowski. I'm the director of the Casper and Totem County International Airport. Wanted to talk a little about when we talk about aerial firefighting, a little bit about what is happening in Casper and kind of when it goes to looking at what type of support that as you start looking at support. Casper Airport has had a BLM single engine air tanker base for a number of years. It was kind of a cobbled together facility that could support one aircraft refueling at a given time. A few years back with the BLM, they approached us about constructing a new facility where they could in essence refuel two single engine air tankers at the same time. So we worked with them in the process of the design. The Forest Service came along with some money about expanding that to include large air tankers also. We actually became the first facility in the country that was funded with two federal agencies and operated by one, by the BLM. And that facility came online last year in June. In addition to that facilities at the airport, when you hear about the Casper Interagency Dispatch Center, that's located at the airport, and the state helitack facility is under construction. It'll come online next year. So I gave you a handout. This is just looking at what happened last year. And it's an apples to oranges comparison because prior to 2024, we could not handle the large air tankers. So it is an apples to oranges comparison. A typical year prior to 2024, out of our facility, they would drop about 90,000 gallons of retardant in a year. In 2023, it was actually 34,000 gallons. So you go along to last year. So the base was opened up on June 11th, went in operation. They had their first operations June 14th, and the last operations was October 28th. So it was about a 4-month period of time. Comparison for this year, that's about 50% of the way through of what we are through this year. So last year, normal year, 900,000 gallons. Last year, they dropped 800, have the number in front of me, 829,454 gallons, or about a multiplier of 10 times the amount of retardant was dropped last year than the prior year. And talking to the people at the BLM, they said that that's, the ones that have been here for 20 years, that's something that they had not seen before, that type of an operations and that level of activity at the airport. So you go along to this year. So this year, the first mission started June 27th. So right now, 72,562 gallons were flown in a single day. That was actually on Sunday. That broke the record. The record was set the prior day with about 71,000 gallons. And all that retardant for those 2 days of operations went to the Grand Canyon fire. In fact, there's been 87, as of yesterday, 87 operations, missions flown, 241,000 gallons of retardant that had been dropped on the Red Canyon fire just out of Casper operations. So Senator Driscoll talked about resources and what resources were required. I'm not smart enough to know that other than to give all the money to Kelly that she asked for. But other than that, that was my plug for Kelly with State Forestry. When it comes specifically, and I know where I hang on my head is just with the aerial firefighting aspects. What we'd ask for is your continued support for those programs as those programs are looking to be able to expand if there's opportunities for expansion. I think you heard testimony earlier today about the importance of the aerial assets. I think if you look at the Red Canyon fire right now, without that 241,000 gallons of retardant in those aerial operations, what difference that fire would be right now. So we at the airport are proud of what we've done. We're proud of the partnership we have with the state and the federal government in these areas. We're committed to be able to do whatever we can to be able to support those missions going forward. And we just ask for your continued support as you look at what resources are necessary, particularly when it looks at the aviation assets. So.
Great. Senator Driscoll, did you have a comment? Anything? Nothing? Okay. Well, yes, Representative Alleman.
Thank you, Mr. Senator. I know the good work you've done. I see the planes come over and I go through Casper and I see them take off. Thank you for what you've done.
Mr. Chairman, Representative, thank you. It's an honor to be able to have a very small part. It's a lot easier to be able to get the facilities than to fund the operations. And you look at all the activity that comes in, and I have no idea what happens and how this is all coordinated. It makes sense, but we're just happy to be able to be part of that. So I appreciate that.
Just a follow up, please.
Yes, please.
Thank you. Do want you to know you're in my district.
Okay. Any other questions, comments?
Mr. Chairman, I'm back. I tried to.
Thank you so much.
I tried to get on when you were commenting and it managed to just kick me totally off. So they let me back in.
I was just asking Senator Driscoll if you had any comments or questions.
I do. I could hear right up to the point you asked me. When I tried to unmute, I managed to have it disappear. So no, just a huge thank you for all they've done. And I think it's been stellar what's gone on and the ability for them to pick up in stride to double the size of the crews and what's going on. I think it's pretty impressive where we're at. I think we're all in tears what's going on, but we're highly impressed with the actions and reactions that the people have had. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, Senator, thank you.
Thank you again. Appreciate it.
Yep, thank you.
Other public comment? Welcome back.
Mr. Chairman, Co-Chairman, J.R. Fox, Fire Warden, Campbell County. I believe the committee was given a couple of handouts from our session in Gillette. We were asked to bring back some more information about modules, and we got together and I'll just hit a couple of the high points. The module is a highly trained, self-sufficient crew designed for initial or extended attack on wildland fires. The composition, as we discussed, was a 10-person crew and a variety of fire operations, a variety of training that goes beyond just the basic 24 hours of training. These crews would, as they come back year after year, they gain experience, they gain training. The qualifications that go along with that continue to climb. Led by a squad boss or crew leader, we would ask for those positions to be, those two positions to be permanent. And the mobility is important, back to the module concept, being able to break into small groups or teams that could accomplish several different objectives with the leadership that's part of that crew. That's an important part of a module. The cost per module, that was an ask from the committee last time we met. We estimate, working with forestry, and that $1 million for personnel in the biennium and $500,000 for startup costs. So our ask was for 4 modules. That was the financial implications for that. Logistical needs. These folks can be self-sufficient for the most part. Every couple of days they'll need food and water, and maybe some more soft fuel, but they can be spiked out. They can be in camps. They can be in your communities for initial attack. They can travel during the day, during night. So it's very important to be flexible with these folks and up to 14 days at a time. With that, Mr. Co-Chairman, if there's any questions about the fire module before I move on to another topic.
Co-Chairman Bear.
Thank you, Mr. Co-Chairman. Chief Fox, in the original proposal, you had a separate trainer from the supervision on that team. Is that still the module that you're describing here in this new handout?
Mr. Co-Chairman, the fire trainers are currently in place under state forestry. These would be dedicated positions to the module itself.
Right.
And with that, as we get into mitigation, that's kind of some of the impetus for the off-season work. Those would be year-round employees, those two positions that could help with some of that fuel mitigation work. Some of the, the other topics that were discussed earlier today too.
Yeah, follow up.
Well, you answered my follow-up question right away there with the off-season using these FTEs for that, which was in your proposal. So I appreciate that. But my question specifically is, in the design, you had a trainer that was separate from the management of the crew. I'm wondering, are these positions interchangeable? Is this a hard and fast? We've got to have this as a separate person. Or is it, as what I heard just a moment ago, maybe it's just about getting the volume that you can actually be effective in the off season when you go to do some mitigation work? Is it a combination of all of the above, or what is the real? I mean, we're certainly, as a funding body, we're looking at what's the minimum requirement to begin with. And then everything else is a add-on from there. So this trainer being a separate person, is that a minimum requirement, or is that an add-on?
Mr. Co-Chairman, my recommendation would be to keep the training separate from the 10-person module. So the trainers are currently employed by state forestry. I would ask for the crew of 10, 8 seasonals, roughly 2 full-time employees. Now, we've talked a lot about capacity and other duties as assigned. Certainly there may be instances where they are interchangeable. I think typically when somebody who's probably already employed by forestry as a trainer, the work that these modules will be doing will be quite a bit different. They will be boots on the ground, cutting fire line, doing burning operations, where the trainer maybe more mid-level management in a wildland fire, maybe an incident commander type 4 type position. So I know state forestry is good about maximizing their folks and their potential and their interchangeability. But I do think it is separate from the 10-person on the module.
Thank you for the follow-up, Co-Chair. So the cost in this handout would not include that trainer. Is that an accurate statement?
That's correct.
Representative Pendergraph.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This piques my interest. I have a military background, and it was always the leaders who were the trainers. And this seems to be departing from that concept. And I would just, maybe in follow-up to Co-Chairman Bears, what's the advantage to separating those?
Mr. Chairman, Shad Cooper, Summit County Fire Warden. Mr. Chairman, Representative Pendergraph, I'm sure JR can help me answer this question. Last time we were here, we presented the trainer as part of the module, as you recall, and there was some confusion and some question about that. And I wanted to clarify that the existing trainers that Wyoming State Forestry Division has employed, they come to my fire department right now and train my volunteer firefighters. Their primary function is to assist with training our existing volunteer staff in the state. And to the point that JR was just making, just for clarification, the module request is separate from that. And so we wanted to make sure to separate the existing trainers from that responsibility. Now the trainers have a wealth of experience and qualifications and background in wildland fire and have some capacity there where I think they can supplement and assist with the module, but to Representative Pendergraft's question, the leaders of the module will have the capacity to manage and supervise that module and assist with the training. But it's not an all-inclusive, self-sufficient program. We train together. We ask our federal cooperators to train with us. We all benefit from that shared training. But I hope that answers the question, is that the trainers that we were looking at earlier, they had other duties that were specific to training our existing volunteer workforce. I shouldn't say volunteer, the existing Wyoming Fire Service. And we didn't want to muddy the waters with trying to lump those trainers into the proposal for the modules. Is that appropriate? You got anything to add?
Okay. Yes. Anyone else?
You want to talk?
You had some other issues.
Mr. Co-Chairman, as we kind of pivot towards the emergency fire suppression account, I believe everybody has this handout. We presented this back in Gillette. Certainly appreciate your consideration of our request for a floor and a ceiling for the fire suppression account. Our interest lies in protecting the finances of our fire districts and our counties and safeguarding the longevity of the fire suppression account. As we've seen over the last 2 seasons, these fires don't stay inside neat boxes. They're moving to other counties and other jurisdictions. And the fire suppression account is the only account that Wyoming State Forestry has to utilize on state land fires. So the state forester has that account for state land fires, which is appropriate. She's also testified her desire to encompass all state lands. As we know, there's lots of different varieties of state lands to come under eligibility for the fire suppression account. The issue, as I see it, is when this account is drawn down into the negative, it falls on the counties to potentially, if there's no legislative effort, to refill that account. So I have also submitted this document for the committee, that to have you guys consider redlining that paragraph D, which essentially would take that financial burden off the counties and the fire districts if that fire suppression account runs into the negative and is no longer refilled. And with that, I certainly answer any questions, and then I think Chief Cooper has a couple other items as well.
Representative Pendergraft.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On the bottom of that handout is mention of hazard pay. Can you give us a little bit of an overview of what you have in mind there, what that would look like?
Why don't you jump in? You talk about the models, but yeah, right. Yeah,
Co-Chairman, Representative Pendergraft. State Forester Norris has outlined several challenges with employees, state forestry employees in wildland fire. It's very difficult for her to keep staff. I believe she said earlier it would take about 4 years to build up a program in Riverton, and her longevity in that program is about 4 years. So essentially, about the time the program was up and running, she'd be looking for new employees again. Most of her employees that are fairly new tend to wander towards the BLM and Forest Service for a variety of reasons. But on the bottom of this handout, here's a couple of the main reasons. The work doesn't change just because the color on the map changes. What does change is the benefits. Currently, state forestry employees do not get paid days off after a 14-day fire assignment like the BLM and the Forest Service. The state forestry employees are not included in the Wyoming paid fire plan B. So they do not get retirement after 25 years. And hazard pay also, which is included in Forest Service and BLM, that is essentially 25% of your base wage under certain conditions. Uncontrolled fire, low-level flight, those are the two most common ones that the federal employees do receive. So it is attractive for those employees to, in many cases, we haven't seen many state employees move to different states because they can essentially go across the street in Casper and Buffalo and work for the BLM or the Forest Service. So I hope that answers your question, Mr. Pendergraft.
Thank you for that, JR. Let me pick up and continue the conversation. I thought it'd be worthwhile to return after our meeting in Gillette. There was a couple of questions specifically about the costs. We were able to meet with Wyoming State Forest Division and Director Norris and put together what we thought those estimated costs would be. And today, as part of public comment, we thought it'd be beneficial just to walk through that. So I'll start from the top. And as my counterpart, Chief Fox had mentioned, in Gillette, we'd recommended a floor and a ceiling for the emergency fire suppression account. And the reason why we think that's valuable is because right now it's kind of it's a steep decline all the way down to zero, and then we come back every few years and ask for additional appropriation to bring that account back up, and it's really unsustainable and it's just not dependable. And to JR's point about state statute, it's a little concerning when we're making decisions. And to my point earlier, when I talked about, the Pocket Creek fire and ordering resources that I didn't know for sure were going to be paid for. If the emergency fire suppression account is dwindling and I've got that red alarm in the back of my mind going off that this expensive fire may not be paid for, that's problematic. And it certainly has impacted my decision making in the past on how we respond to wildland fires. And so to me, the recommendation that we put before the committee for consideration is if we can stop going all the way down to $0 and even into arrears, into the red, and just set a minimum floor of $40 million. And then anytime that account goes below $40 million, make it automatically reappropriate and stay above $40 million. Then we get away from that considerable risk to local agencies on whether or not we can afford to pay for that cost. Co-chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Be careful with automatic appropriations. Those are dirty words on this committee. So explain to me with this floor and ceiling how the borrowing authority of the executive branch would play in, because we did double that borrowing authority. Obviously, that gives you an additional cushion. But if we had a floor of $40 million, would that even be necessary?
Mr. Co-Chairman, so the response is we didn't bring into consideration any change of the governor's emergency authority to pay for that. We did very much appreciate Senate File 152 when that accounting was doubled. We believe that this is a standalone issue separate from the governor's emergency authority. And to your point, and I do appreciate automatic is probably not a tenable word. However, we want to address that. But my point is rather than waiting to get down to $0, when it gets down to $40 million, and then maybe we come back on a case by case basis and try to address that. But I do believe that Chief Fox had made a different recommendation that I think would also accomplish the goal that we're trying to get to. And remember earlier, I was trying to explain the concern to local counties across the entire state is what do we do if that account does go in the red? How do we pay for these fires in the future? And that's the real goal we're trying to get to. And so I think Chief Fox is given a very tenable solution that may also be palatable as an alternative, and it's certainly worth consideration. Continuing on the page, there's basically three recommendations that we presented to you in Gillette. The first one was to address the sustainability of the emergency fire suppression account. The second bullet down is to address fire mitigation. And we didn't give this much time. We were pretty short on time by the time we got to the end of the day there. But to me, it's very valuable to have a conversation about trying to prevent fires before they occur. And I think it's money well spent. And I'll ask for some assistance here, phone a friend from Director Norris to help me out. But she has a number, and the way I recall is for every $1 spent in mitigation, it's $6 less spent in suppression. And I'll ask her to come up and help me to address that in more detail. But the recommendation we're trying to get to here is last year, there was a bill in front of you for consideration. It was House Bill 101. It did not actually make it to the floor. It was not introduced. But the House Bill 101 was all about trying to reduce the likelihood, severity, and frequency of wildland fires by reducing hazardous fuels in our communities. I very much am an advocate for that approach of trying to prevent fires and then try to keep them small when they do happen. And I think that our money would be well spent in mitigating the risk before the fires happen. And then I would also ask Director Norris to come up and help me out and try to show some of the work that's been done in the past. All 23 counties have taken great steps to try to address this risk of hazardous fuels in their communities. And to different degrees and different success. But one of the things that I find that we're reliant on is grant funding from our federal government, which has proven to be difficult for many of our communities to get access to, and then even recently to depend on. And there we go. Here she's getting ready. I've been trying to tee you up. So I'll defer to Director Norris, but she's got great information about the work the local counties have done, but where we're falling short too. And I think that's important for consideration. So the recommendation that we present to you is to create a $10 million cost share grant to help local communities, to help the state, and even to work with our federal partners to create landscape level hazardous fuel reduction. And I think Director Norris, or I'm sorry, I keep calling you Director, State Forester Norris can help to fill in some color on that.
All right. Thank you, Chairman. So there is a 2018 fact sheet out of FEMA, and it really focuses on natural hazard mitigation, sayings, and it covers all different types of mitigation, whether it's flood, hurricane, wind, earthquake, and then they have wildland urban interface, and it's a 3-to-1 investment. The overall study, though, showed that any investment in mitigation is a 6-to-1 investment. So if you were to look at this request and say, hey, this cost share of 10 million, let's times it by 3, that's a $30 million investment in savings. When it comes to mitigation, the reason the counties have asked me to present this is because each county is doing mitigation differently. And you're well aware of that in your own counties, correct? So right now, we had, over the last 10 years, we've had 10,000 acres treated in mitigation work in Wyoming, and that's done between the state and the counties. Out of that, 13.4 million was funded, and that came all from federal funds. And then that's federal funding. I do not collect what the counties are putting in, and the counties are putting in their own money. And so that is something that we've discussed, that I will probably pull a survey together in the coming months and try to figure out what does that actually look like as a whole in Wyoming. Because they're federally funded, we have about a 52% success rate. So these grants that we are applying to, just so you're aware, are very competitive. And we are competing with the Western states. We're competing with the Front Range of Denver. We're competing with the Front Range of Utah, California. And so we are most successful when we're doing planning applications, when we're doing community wildfire protection plans. And currently right now, we have 8 counties that are getting updates and received federal funding to do that for planning, and are updating their CWPPs. And we have 13 that are current and active. One of the things we want to make sure you understand too is many of these counties and are doing mitigation, and they have hired mitigation coordinators across the state. But there's some challenges with that because the grants are used to fund those mitigation employees. And so as that mitigation comes and goes, just as a heads up, that can be difficult. And we have seen, though, an increase in that as well. So the counties are taking major steps in the right direction, but longstanding mitigation coordinators are on the verge of retiring. And so there is some real opportunity to, again, to take a look at what mitigation can do in the future. Is that good?
Okay, anything else?
Chief Fox has already addressed the bottom bullet of trying to address the recommendation to increase wildland fire capacity by hiring 4 modules to place them at various locations within the state. And I think that's really the crux of the ask. We really need to increase that capacity and address the wildland fire risk by making sure we've got firefighters available to respond and help us to fill that critical gap that we tried to illustrate at Gillette and again today. So happy to answer any questions, and then I'll hand it over and let Chief Moyer introduce himself. He's got some comments as well.
Chief Moyer, why don't we go ahead and hear you?
Mr. Chairman, committee members, my name is Mike Moyer. I'm Fire Chief with Jackson Hole Fire EMS and the Teton County Fire Warden. I wanted to just give you a little perspective from a local department perspective as it relates to what we've been talking about today. Jackson Hole Fire EMS combination department, which means we're a combination of career and volunteer members. We have 48 career members and 75 volunteers across the county working out of 6 stations. We provide all hazards response, structure fire, EMS, hazmat, wildland, et cetera. I've personally served in Wyoming emergency services since 1987 and have seen firsthand the importance of coordination and collaboration across all these agencies. We cannot be successful without that and without our partners. As recently as Sunday, we had a lightning bust roll through our community, multiple small fire starts, including a fire that was immediately threatening a home. Quick response by our local units contained the fire as our federal partners were en route and aircraft were on standby. Fortunately, in this case, we were able to contain the fire quickly that day. But as we know, we're all in quite high fire danger across particularly central and western Wyoming. When we're faced with a rapidly expanding fire, we deploy both our career and volunteer firefighters. However, it's challenging for us to meet our ongoing daily 911 responses and responsibilities beyond that initial TAC period. Career staff must return to providing paramedic EMS coverage. Volunteers must return to their jobs. And we see significant benefit in our state fire resources, both the air and the modules like we've discussed here, to help sustain our local resources. As Chief Cooper related, it's difficult for our staff to continue to staff a fire over multiple days. A quick, robust initial attack can keep a fire from developing into a weeks-long effort. Having additional state-based resources can provide us that backup that we often need. I also see opportunity to retain young firefighters in Wyoming, developing experience and qualifications and setting up that next generation of fire leadership, which we're going to need. I would relate that several of my young career firefighters came to us from the wildland fire community, and they bring that experience to us. In conclusion, I'd just like to thank Director Norris and her team for their daily support, and thank you for considering opportunities to fill the gaps in wildfire response and capability. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Any questions, comments? Okay, thank you so much. Appreciate your comments. Thank you. Come on up, whoever else would like to give public comment. Welcome.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. My name is Jeremy Barnum. I represent Jackson Hole Airport, just to the west over the hills. And I wanted to offer just an example or two of some of what's already been discussed by my colleague from Casper and also Chief Moyer from my community. Airports are strategically located multifunctional assets when it comes to fighting fire. A lot of people, when they think of Jackson Hole Airport, you probably think of tourism and commerce. You think of some of our high-level visitors that we see. We welcome the Vice President through the airport, as you probably saw in the news not too long ago. And that all matters. That has huge state economic impact. According to state analysis, that's a couple of $2 billion in state economic impact and supports more than 20,000 jobs. But we do have a role, including at Jackson Hole Airport, in protecting these places that are drawing tourists here to spend money in our state in the first place. The Jackson Hole Airport, while it's completely located within Grand Teton National Park, has a long-term lease with the Department of the Interior. And despite that land assignment, we offered up a part of that lease for the federal government to build the Teton Interagency Helitack. That helitack is jointly operated by the National Park Service and the Forest Service. And its 3,000 square foot building and 4 helipads support initial attack, long-term fire support, and prescribed fire management right out of Jackson Hole Airport. It's available to support any other kind of fire mitigation or response needs across the ecosystem as well. Now, what you may not have seen in the news, about a month ago, there was a fire in Grand Teton National Park. It was the Signal Flat Fire. It was caused by lightning, as has been referenced. We are also in very high fire danger in our neck of the woods and a valley that's completely surrounded by heavily forested mountains. That fire was contained in about 24 hours and only burned about 8 acres. Now, compared to some of the challenges that you've heard, that might seem like small potatoes. But if you know Grand Teton National Park and you know where Signal Mountain is, you know that that fire was only about a mile away from Signal Mountain Lodge, Signal Mountain Campground, a wastewater treatment facility, the busiest tourism and visitor road in Grand Teton National Park. It's just a few miles away from Jackson Lake Lodge, Coulter Bay, which is the biggest campground, 3 different marinas right there on Jackson Lake. So as you can imagine, the economic impact, both from hundreds of millions of dollars in losses to federal facilities that are privately run by concessioners, but also those second order effects if those facilities are closed. Those folks aren't coming to our state to spend money and enjoy the scenery that we get to enjoy every day. In talking to the park about the role of the airport in immediately and rapidly extinguishing that fire before it threatened those facilities. And I want to quote the fire officials there. The airport was a huge suppression asset, was essential for initial attack. They sent in an initial small Type 3 helicopter to immediately respond to the fire. And then they were able to bring in a bigger Type 3 helicopter that could operate and stage out of the Jackson Hole Airport to continue to extinguish that fire. And so we're not here talking today about the Great Fire at Grand Teton National Park. It's right to focus on big fires, but it's also important to remember the role of rapid fire response and more concentrated development with tourism infrastructure that's hugely beneficial to our state. So just in conclusion, thank you for your time on this issue that's so important to my community and so many communities across the state. And maybe just a gentle reminder, and if you'll pardon the pun, given the extraordinary facility we're in, airports are an important weapon in our firefighting arsenal. Thank you.
Thank you, Co-Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Barnum, thank you for being here. Appreciate that testimony. That is helpful as we determine what we're going to do going forward for the rest of the state. I'm glad you have those resources. If I recollect correctly, you guys also have a search and rescue helicopter out of that airport. Is that accurate or is that changed?
Thank you for the question, Co-Chairman. That is a fluid kind of issue with our federal partners. So the search and rescue teams and helicopter have operated off of our Helitech. I won't speak for the federal government, but over the last year, they've had some issues between the agencies and some agreements. And so they're now working with Chief Moyer and Teton County Search and Rescue to operate through the county's helicopter. Having said that, the Helitech at Jackson Hole Airport, because it's in the park and centrally located, still provides a really important staging area for those search and rescue efforts.
Any other questions, comments? Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Other public testimony, please come up. Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Monica Leininger. I'm the Director of External Affairs for the Nature Conservancy in Wyoming. And we just wanted to thank the committee for digging into this topic around fire management in Wyoming. Particularly, our organization has a lot of history and continues to do a lot of work on the topic of invasive annual grasses. in the state. And we've done several collaborations with local governments, monitoring for cheatgrass encroachment, working on the native seed supply chain to make sure there are seeds readily available for reseeding efforts, as well as produce science that helps guide treatment regimens. And all of this rolls up to our goals to provide working landscapes for people and wildlife in Wyoming. I wanted to give the opportunity to my colleague here to provide a little bit more background on a fact sheet we provided to the committee.
Hello, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. I'm Anika Mahoney. I'm the Nature Conservancy Sagebrush Program Director. I've never testified before a committee before, so I'm a little nervous and hopefully won't make any mistakes. Apologies if I do.
Good to have you here.
Thank you. So yeah, I'm here to share our perspective and thinking about cost-effective and robust fire management in Wyoming. Obviously, we've heard that it's key in preventing small fires from growing into disastrous fires, and we can make that happen by supporting our firefighters by ensuring they have adequate resources and fuels mitigation. And fuels mitigation is what I'm going to talk about because that's the piece that I know a bit more about. And so as we heard from Director Budd, one thing that's really changed for fire control in the state over the last 20, 30 years, it really is cheatgrass in our rangelands. We've heard a little bit about the facts about how cheatgrass can be like gasoline on the landscape, so I won't go into too much detail there, and I think you guys have done a deep dive in the past into that. But what I will highlight is we provided a fact sheet, a cheat sheet, if you will, with facts about cheatgrass and the connection between cheatgrass and that wildfire cycle. And I'll just touch on a couple facts. I'm not going to go through the whole cheat sheet, but hopefully you'll be able to take a look at it if you'd like. But a couple key pieces that I think haven't been hit on yet today are 78% of Wyoming's lands are at risk for invasion by cheatgrass. And right now we're at about 20 to 25% invasion. So we still have a big opportunity to kind of stop cheatgrass from invading further. And if we think about our current, fire seasons, what we're seeing now, it's hard to imagine what that looks like if the full 78% gets taken over by cheatgrass. So just want to call that out. The other piece that I want to touch on, which Senator Grew and also Director Budd both alluded to, was that what we've learned from our neighbors from neighboring states where cheatgrass has already invaded heavily is that what they see in their native rangelands is a change from fire return rates of somewhere on the order of 100 to 350 years to a return rate of 2 to 5 years. And that's in kind of a worst case scenario, but that has been observed. So you can imagine what that means for firefighting costs. If you go from having a wildland fire somewhere in your rangelands once every 350 years, and suddenly with cheatgrass, you're having fire come and hit you every 3 to 5 years. And that's a pretty big change in costs to people, cost potentially in life. It's something to really think about. And I think it makes it really key that control of cheatgrass really will be helpful for our initial attack firefighters to be able to extinguish fires before they turn into multi-million-dollar disasters. Like what we saw with the house straw fire and what we're now also seeing with that Red Canyon fire, cheatgrass has been attributed to sort of part of the cause of why that fire has spread so quickly. So just wanted to thank you all for the opportunity to speak and for the work that you've done on the topic and the funding that has been provided in the past for fire mitigation work. And I think hopefully, as we've seen from this fire season, I think it really points to the need for continued predictable funding for preventative hazardous fuels treatments. Similar to how it is helpful to have, a continuous and predictable source of money for any effort. The same applies for fuels treatments. You need trained crews to get out there and spray herbicides. You've got to be able to plan in advance to get the herbicide on the ground with the right timing. And so having something that could be, a known source of money year over year could go a long way towards getting really robust response and being able to address cheatgrass on the landscape. And thank you again for the opportunity to speak. And if you have any questions, be happy to take them.
Thank you so much. Representative Pendergraph and then my co-chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for the work that you guys are doing. Several of us recently had an opportunity to fly basically from Sheridan along the face of the Bighorns north to the Montana line. And then we turn east, and from the air, you didn't need the line to see where the state line was. You mentioned in your talk about our neighbors. Are you able to give any insight as to what it's going to take to wake Montana up? It was so striking to just see the, Wyoming's green. There's some places where we need to get to work, and Montana was awful.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee or representative. I can't really speak to the approaches that Montana has or hasn't taken, but I do think that Director Budd alluded to the fact that Wyoming has been lucky to some extent that we have had, a little bit higher elevation landscape, and we've had, cooler temperatures that have kind of staved off cheatgrass. I think that we're in a great position because a lot of our county folks like weed and pest and conservation districts are extremely proactive. They're aware of the problem and they're working to find the funds and do the work on the ground. And that's obviously in close partnership with landowners who are also, fighting to keep their rangelands. So I don't have anything more specific than that, but I think it is a proactive approach because another piece of this is that once you get to very high levels of invasion of cheatgrass, it's very challenging and very expensive and takes years upon years of effort to recover to a native rangeland if it's even possible. So, going early and taking a proactive response really is the most cost effective and potentially the only strategy that will work.
Thank you, Mr. Co-Chair. Thank you for being here and testifying. Director Budd mentioned that we had a task force before in 2020, I believe it was, with 32 experts that came up with a chemical application, and that ended up failing. Now we're on Rejuvra. You guys mentioned that you're looking at the science. I'm just curious, is there something on the horizon that is going to be better than Rejuvra? Because this is a 3 to 5 year reapply it in the areas we just applied. So it's hard to see a horizon in this problem.
Thank you, Co-Chairman. I think that Rejuvra is extremely promising, but I think unfortunately, like in much of weed management, it's sort of this arms race between the weeds and treatments. I think there's additional tools in the toolbox beyond herbicides as far as best practices and construction sites and places where you have surface disturbance to prevent new cheatgrass from coming in. And I think there's always ongoing research onto new and additional herbicides that can be coming down the line. I'm not familiar with where it stands, but there has been research over the years into some forms of biocontrol. But as far as I know, that's not really functional on the larger landscape yet. So right now, being proactive about making sure you're not bringing weeds into places that they aren't already. So sort of, cleaning off equipment requirements about making sure that you don't have like mud caked with seed that you're bringing in places, and making sure that when you're moving livestock that they're not introducing weeds to places where it isn't. That's sort of first line of defense. And then for that landscape scale approach for needing to treat cheatgrass, Rejuvra really is one of like the best tool we have going right now. And it's been used also in combination, with some of the herbicides that we've had longer in combination with plateau and so forth. But that's also the conservation districts and weed and pests are acting as a lot of small laboratories. They're all trying different combinations of things. They're trying different levels of things, and they're working with the tools that we have now to see what's going to be the most effective. But unfortunately, I think it is potentially a long haul of, continuing to fend it off as long as we can until the silver bullet comes along.
Okay, other questions or comments? Thank you so much. Appreciate it. That's good information. And by the way, thank you for this. We'll take it with us. So other public comment? Any other public comment? Okay. Yes, is there anyone online for public comment? Okay. Well, committee, a couple of things. Well, first of all, staff, Mr. Richards, anything from staff for today?
No, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. By the way, I want to thank staff, not only for the logistics, but the number of materials that were sent out. Thank you. I appreciate what you do for us. And throughout the summer with these meetings, it's, there's a little extra work, and just appreciate you, all of you, for that. Just looking at tomorrow, members, we have a call to order at 8:30. Then we'll be dealing with sales and use tax most of the day, and then obviously we'll be going back to the DD waiver program. And my good co-chairman will be chairing tomorrow. Mr. Co-chair, any comments before we adjourn for the day?
I think I've been talking to staff. We've got a few things that we need to work on behind the scenes to bring more materials and more testimony on this subject again to our next meeting. So we still have more information that we need to gather. And I think one of the things that we've got to bring into this discussion, we started to last time, we touched on a little bit more this time, but that is working with the ranchers and farmers out there and getting the public educated on how they can work with the fire assets to fight these fires. That article today was pretty heartbreaking when landowners are saying they're just helpless and they're watching this stuff burn. It's their livelihood, and anything we can do in the prevention realm, we need to focus on that. So we'll work on those things behind the scenes so we can bring some more testimony into the next meeting.
Completely agree. Completely agree. Okay. Thank you again, and we'll see you at 8:30 tomorrow morning.